Chapter 751. In the cultivation world of the 9 provinces, cultivators' aptitudes were divided into 64 grades. The higher the number, the better the aptitude. This meant that the higher a cultivator's affinity with the heaven and earth spirit chi, the more efficient they would be at absorbing the heaven and earth spirit chi. After all, for most cultivators, absorbing the heaven and earth spirit chi was the main method of cultivation without any hidden dangers. Consuming spirit pills was only a supplement. Hence, aptitude for cultivation was especially important. Lu Ye's nickname One Leaf originated from the results of his aptitude test in Evil Moon Valley. A one-leaf aptitude could be said to be only slightly better than ordinary people who could not cultivate at all. All this while, Lu Yi had been brooding over his nickname. What made him feel extremely helpless was that even the heavenly secrets seemed to have recognized him as such. In the battlefield mark, his name was Lu Yi. However, he did not know when it had become Lu Ye. The Spirit Stream leaderboard in the Spirit Stream battlefield and the hunting leaderboard in the hunting ground both showed Lu Ye. Now Lu Yi had finally broken free of his one-leaf aptitude. Search. Although he was not sure about his current aptitude, it was impossible for him to only have one leaf. With his efficiency in absorbing the heaven and earth spirit chi, he would at least have 40 leaves. It was even possible for him to have 50 leaves. The change in his aptitude would undoubtedly speed up his cultivation in the future. Lu Yi was in a good mood. He could not help but laugh. Hua Xi, who was talking to Yi, could not help but glance at him. She muttered, "You're like an idiot." After saying that, she ignored him and continued talking to Yi. In truth, Lu Yi had already vaguely sensed the change in his aptitude when he was in the Soaring Dragon Realm. However, the Soaring Dragon Realm had lost too much of its foundation, and the heaven and earth spirit chi was not dense. Hence he could not feel it clearly. When he returned to the Cloudy River battlefield, the feeling became even more obvious. At this moment it was finally confirmed. Lu Yi did not expect the world's origin to be able to change a person's cultivation aptitude. However, when he thought about it, it was the world's origin after all. If it could even bring the dead back to life, what was a change in one's cultivation aptitude? Hence he felt relieved. A moment later, Lu Yi stopped circulating his cultivation method. He focused his mind and looked at the innate talent tree. All the rare flames and alchemic flames he bought from the Tianji treasure vault had been devoured clean. He wondered if there were any gains this time. Every time the talent tree engulfed the flames, he would be filled with anticipation when he checked the talent tree. It was because ever since he started cultivating, the many spirit runes on the talent tree had brought him great help. Activating all kinds of spirit inscriptions in battle could increase his combat power and self-defense ability. The reason why he could have such high attainments in Array Dao was also because of the foundation laid by the Dao of Spirit Tattoos. Having reached this level of cultivation, Lu Yi understood one thing. The way of spiritual tattoos involved all aspects of cultivation. The more profound one's attainments in the way of spiritual tattoos were, the easier it would be for him to cultivate other things. Regardless of whether it was the art of sorcery, the art of formation, or even the art of refining, they could all be said to be the extension and branch of the spiritual tattoo. In a word, the way of spiritual tattoos could be regarded as the foundation of all unorthodox methods. Lu Yi was stunned when he saw this. At this moment, more than 20 leaves on the talent tree were glowing red. Clearly, this was a change caused by the devouring flames. However, the leaves did not burn. Only when the leaves were completely burned could Lu Yi check the information contained within them. The fact that the leaves were not completely burned meant that the flames devoured by the talent tree were not enough to ignite the leaves. Furthermore, the fact that more than 20 leaves had the same reaction meant that they were carrying the same spirit rune. Lu Yi was overjoyed. This kind of spiritual inscription that required more than 20 leaves to carry was definitely extremely complicated. Fire Phoenix, Sky Restriction, Flying Wings, and Charm were all spiritual inscriptions of this type. Although the consumption of spiritual energy to execute was much greater than ordinary spiritual inscriptions, the effects were also greater. What kind of spirit rune was this? Lu Yi observed carefully. However, the leaves were not completely ignited and the runes were blurry. No matter how Lu Yi checked, he could not see anything. This made him look forward to it even more. However, the awkward thing was that he did not have too many flames on hand for the talent tree to devour. Or should he devour the earth core fire that he had in reserve? He had always kept about 20 portions of earth core fire on hand, mainly in case the talent tree ran out of fuel one day, and he needed the power of the talent tree to burn the external forces that invaded his body. For example, if he was poisoned at a critical moment like this, if the talent tree ran out of fuel and was not replenished in time, it would be dangerous. He would not use these 20 portions of earth core fire under normal circumstances. As soon as the thought arose, he rejected it. It was not that he was reluctant to use it, but since it was an emergency, it was better not to use it easily. Moreover, according to his observation, even if he devoured these 20 portions of earth core fire, it should not be enough to completely ignite the leaves. There were still many strange flames for sale in the Tianji treasure trove, but all of them were expensive, easily tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of merit points per portion. For some cultivators, they might need these strange flames to cultivate some kind of secret art. However, Lu Yi was only using them for the talent tree to devour. It was not worth it to pay such a high price. Let's wait a little longer. In the future, there would always be a chance to buy a rare flame at a good price. There were still many things that he needed to do now. There were still many things to do, and he was not in a hurry to get this spirit rune with unknown effects. After making up his mind, Lu Yi cut off the urgency in his heart and looked up to Kali. Come on, let's cultivate. Wuxia, come too. Wuxia blinked her big innocent eyes. Her words would not stop until she was shocked to death. Double shame? Otherwise, why would we cultivate together? What nonsense are you spouting in front of a child? Lu Yi glared at her and raised his hand to take out the golden spirit stick that he had exchanged for in the War Merit Pavilion. Wuxia's eyes lit up when she saw it. She walked over and bent down to pick up the spirit stick. She turned it over and over to examine it. So this is a spirit stick? She had heard before that there was something special called a spirit stick in the Cloud River battlefield. This thing could help cultivators quickly increase their cultivation base, and there was also a mechanism like a spirit stick bestowed by the heavens. Chapter 752. Unknown spirit rune. However, if she joined, she would have to take away half of Lu Ye's time. This was undoubtedly not worth it, especially the spirit chi of heaven and earth. To her it was not that important. Her cultivation relied on all kinds of poisons. The many poison pills that Lu Yi had given her were enough for her to cultivate for a long time. Moreover, she had accumulated a large number of myriad poison pills in the spirit stream battlefield. She also needed to refine them and absorb them into her body to increase her cultivation base. Lu Yi was about to continue persuading her when he felt an inexplicable sense of alarm. He suddenly remembered what the flood dragon guarding the War Merit Pavilion had said to him. Everything in the War Merit Pavilion could only be used by himself, and he could not reveal the slightest bit of information to anyone. He had only cared about enjoying Yi's admiring gaze. He wanted to quickly increase Wuxia's cultivation base and had forgotten about this. It seemed that these golden spirit sticks could only be used by him. Thinking of this, Lu Yi no longer tried to persuade her. He raised his hand and crushed a golden spirit stick. The golden dust swirled and turned into a vortex. Immediately after, an extremely large and rich spirit chi of heaven and earth surged out from the vortex, enveloping Lu Yi, Yi and Hu Pa. The spirit chi gathered and did not dissipate. It only surrounded the three figures and did not leak out at all. Wuxia stood at the side and watched, clicking her tongue in wonder. Since it was the first time she had seen a golden spirit stick, it was naturally the first time she had seen someone cultivate with the help of a spirit stick. The purity and richness of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was simply breathtaking. Those few square meters of spiritual chi had already turned into mist. It could be directly cultivated by the earth without any refinement. The long river of spirit chi absorbed and strengthened the power of the earth cultivator. Volume. She understood in her heart. No wonder people said that the Cloud River realm was a magical realm. In this realm, because the foundation that cultivators laid in the spirit stream realm was different, there would often be some cases of cultivators of a higher realm killing enemies. Moreover, because of the spirit sticks, as long as they were lucky enough, it was much easier for Cloud River realm cultivators to increase their cultivation base compared to spirit stream realm cultivators. Now it seemed that it was indeed so. Chapter 752. The spirit stream realm was the first stage of cultivation, And it was also the stage where one's foundation was laid, so it was best not to be too hasty. This was also the reason why there were no spirit lots on the spirit stream battlefield. But at the Cloud River realm, cultivators needed to improve their strength as quickly as possible, and spirit lots were born. Once a cultivator reached the Cloud River realm, they would inevitably come into contact with spirit lots. Seeing that Lu Yi and Yi were already immersed in cultivation, Wuxia walked to the other side of the room and sat down cross-legged. When she had first met Lu Yi, her cultivation had been slightly higher than Lu Ye's, but now the situation had been completely reversed. She was now at the First Order Cloud River realm, while Lu Yi was at the 6th layer. Furthermore, he had 18 golden spirit lots, so his cultivation would increase greatly. He also needed to improve his cultivation. Wuxia thought to herself. Otherwise, the gap between them would only grow bigger and bigger, and one day, she might not even be able to see Lu Ye's back clearly. However, she was still very confident in her ability to increase her cultivation. For ordinary cultivators, even with the help of spirit lots, they still had to do it step by step to increase their cultivation. But she had a different cultivation method. Raising her hand, a 10,000 poison pill appeared in her palm. She stuffed it into her mouth and swallowed it, silently refining it. She felt the surging power explode in her body, strengthening her foundation. The 10,000 poison pill was the condensation of her cultivation. Because she had always been in the spirit stream battlefield, she was suppressed by the spirit stream battlefield's rules, so her cultivation could only reach the 9th layer at most. If she wanted to improve, she could only reach the Cloud River realm and leave the spirit stream battlefield. But how could she bear to leave such a precious place like the 10,000 poison forest? So, every time her cultivation reached the 9th layer, she would cut off her cultivation and condense it into a 10,000 poison pill. After storing the 10,000 poisons pill, his cultivation would drop to Heaven Realm 8, and he would have to cultivate again. This cycle repeated over and over again. This caused Wuxia to suffer for a long time on the spirit stream battlefield. This generation of cultivators on the spirit stream battlefield was really bitter. In the past 10 years there were Feng Yuchan, Yenxing, and Li Baxian, these 3 malignant tumors, who firmly occupied the top 10 positions of the spirit stream list. After sending off the 3 of them with great difficulty, before the spirit stream realm cultivators could even celebrate, Lu Yi of the Jade Blood sect appeared out of nowhere and overtook them. During the few months that he ruled over the spirit stream battlefield, even the first-grade sects in the core region were suppressed to the point that they could not raise their heads. The cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge were on tenterhooks when they went out. Fortunately, in just a few short months, Lu Yi had advanced to the Cloud River realm and left the spirit stream battlefield. They had thought that the haze that had enveloped the spirit stream battlefield had finally dissipated, and light had arrived. Who knew that Wuxia of the Jade Blood sect would suddenly appear? This unknown woman, who seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, was actually a dark cloud that was even darker than Lu Yi's. Because of her, the spirit stream battlefield hadn't seen any sunlight for a very long time. No one could accept the fact that she was listed as a medical cultivator on the spirit stream list. A medical practitioner. It wasn't that there weren't any medical cultivators on the spirit stream list. However, there weren't many of them. Furthermore, their rankings were all quite low, with most of them being below the 50s. A medical cultivator who could make it into the top 50 was already impressive enough, let alone the first place of the spirit stream ranking. Furthermore, she had occupied the top spot for nearly a year, which was even longer than Lu Yi had occupied the spirit stream list. The cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance weren't so bad. After all, the Jade Blood sect was part of their faction. Wuxia occupying the first place could be considered to have brought honor to the Grand Heaven Alliance. However, the Earth cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge were having a hard time. Every time they checked the spirit stream list, they would see the names and factions at the top. It was like an invisible hand was slapping them in the face. In the past year, it was not that there were no experts from the Myriad Demons Ridge who had challenged Wuxia's position at the top of the list. However, after a battle, they had been poisoned without even seeing Wuxia's figure and had no choice but to admit defeat. In the 3 months after Lu Yi had left the spirit stream battlefield, Wuxia had encountered quite a few challenges from the Myriad Demons Ridge. However, as her fame grew, no one dared to provoke her. This gave her plenty of time to cultivate in the Forest of 10,000 Poisons. By the time she left the Forest of 10,000 Poisons, the forbidden area that had existed for countless years in the Spirit Stream battlefield had become an ordinary forest. All the essence in the Forest of 10,000 Poisons had turned into the myriad poisons pills in Wuxia's hands. As a result, she had nearly 100 myriad poisons pills in her storage. Each myriad poisons pill was the condensed essence of the heavenly 8 to heavenly 9 realms. In Lu Ye's hands, the myriad poisons pills could only be used to kill enemies. However, in Wuxia's hands, they were no less effective than the golden spirit lots. In fact, they were even more effective. As long as she refined the myriad poisons again, Wuxia was confident that even if she couldn't catch up to Lu Ye's cultivation, she wouldn't fall too far behind. The room was silent. 2 people, 1 spirit and 1 tiger, were immersed in their cultivation, unable to extricate themselves. Lu Yi didn't use up all 18 golden spirit lots in one go. A golden spirit lot could last for a little more than a day, which was about 14 to 14 hours. If he wanted to use up all 18 golden spirit lots, even if he didn't stop for a moment, it would take 20 days. Although he was eager to increase his cultivation, he also knew that it wasn't necessarily a good thing to increase his cultivation too quickly and fiercely. His body needed to adapt to the increase in strength. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if he couldn't control the power he obtained after his cultivation level increased. An appropriate amount of precipitation would make the increase in cultivation more stable. Therefore, every time he used up 3 golden spirit lots, he would rest for 2 days and continue to cultivate with the help of the spirit lots. He didn't stay idle when he was resting. There were many things he needed to do. Comprehending the secret manual of the Tyrant Saber technique, digesting the 100 Formation Pagoda's gift, activating the Breathfruit Core to enter the Mirage to train and adapt to the changes in his strength. During this period, he sensed another benefit brought to him by the Dragon Soaring Realm's world origin. His comprehension seemed to be much higher than before. Because after comprehending the secret manual of the Tyrant Saber technique again, he could see many things that he couldn't see in the past and comprehend things that he hadn't comprehended in the past. The secret manual of the Tyrant Saber technique wasn't just those 3 blades. This was a complete set of saber technique inheritance. Everything was contained in those 3 earth-shattering blades. Lu Yi could only observe the first blade now, but he could already learn many useful things from it. And these comprehensions could all improve his battle skills and killing methods. The person who left behind this set of inheritance must be a powerful cultivator. The Dragon Emperor wasn't something from the Dragon Soaring Realm. It was a foreign object. Lu Yi suspected that the Tyrant Saber technique was also a foreign object. Just like that, the days passed without any surprises. A month passed in a flash. When the power of the last golden spirit lot was exhausted, the golden vortex in front of him disappeared, and the thick fog that shrouded his body also disappeared. Lu Yi slowly opened his eyes and exhaled softly. He had to admit that after his cultivation aptitude improved, the efficiency of his cultivation had indeed increased significantly. This undoubtedly made the value of the golden spirit lot greater to him. The long river of spirit energy in his body surged, and the sound of the river water hummed. As Lu Yi exhaled, it slowly calmed down. The surging spirit energy fluctuations around his body also slowly converged. And the spirit energy fluctuations showed that he was an 8th order Cloud River Realm cultivator. After a month of hard work, he broke through from the 6th order Cloud River Realm to the 8th order in one fell swoop, directly crossing a realm. Such speed was simply amazing. Moreover, Lu Yi hadn't just entered the 8th order. He had already broken through to the 8th order 3 days ago. These 3 days of cultivation had allowed him to accumulate a lot of spirit energy in the 8th order. Yi and Hupo's spirit energy and monster chi fluctuations were not inferior to his. In other words, in terms of cultivation alone, Yi and Hupo were not left behind by him. All of this was due to the mysterious power of the golden spirit lot. Part of the reason for its effectiveness was the special cultivation method of the spirit and tiger. Lu Ye's cultivation efficiency was naturally much higher than Yi and Hupo's, but the spirit and tiger's cultivation had always been complementary. The two combined into one, which was why they could be on par with Lu Yi. The 3 of them had grown tremendously, But compared to Hua Xi's growth, it seemed to be nothing. Lu Yi raised his eyes and looked at Hua Xi, who was still cultivating. At this moment, this woman was surrounded by a faint green fog. At a glance, it was obvious that it was highly toxic. However, under her control, it did not spread at all. Otherwise, this room would not be able to accommodate anyone. A month ago, Hua Xi was in the First Order Cloud River realm, but now her spirit energy fluctuations had reached the Sixth Order Cloud River realm. In a month, she had crossed 5 minor realms. Throughout the ages, this was probably the only example. Even if other cultivators continuously used the Golden Spirit Lot for a month, their cultivation speed would not be able to match Hua Xi's progress. All of this was naturally due to her myriad poison pill. This was the condensation of one minor realm cultivation, so it was naturally very easy for her to refine it into her body. Therefore, although Hua Xi had stayed in the spirit stream battlefield for nearly a year, the impact on her cultivation was only temporary. She had just used a method that others could not understand to store her cultivation. When she arrived at the Cloud River battlefield, she had made terrifying progress. Retracting his gaze, Lu Yi stood up. Is he leaving? He saw through his thoughts. And there are some things that should be settled. He naturally knew what he was talking about. Ever since he had formed a grudge with those people in the hunting ground, the other party had been relentless and wanted to kill Lu Yi. After such a long time, Lu Yi was completely defeated, but he was able to turn defeat into victory with the help of the spirit array. But this kind of entanglement would eventually come to an end. No one wanted to be constantly targeted. Read the latest chapter of The Great Sage. CC in the Spirit Stream battlefield, the myriad demon-rich cultivators targeted Lu Yi in all kinds of ways, but when Lu Yi had enough strength, he killed them until rivers of blood flowed. The core region's large sects were suppressed to the point that they could not raise their heads. He had a very strong premonition. History seemed to be repeating itself. The current Lu Yi, just like in the Spirit Stream battlefield, already had the capital to turn the tables. Chapter 753. Diagonally opposite the Tianji Business Alliance, in a restaurant. Two people sat opposite each other at a table by the window on the second floor. It was Xiaoliang and Tan Sheng. At another table not far away, there were two people sitting. Chu Yun and Zhou Pei from the Sacred Flame sect. The two of them from the Sacred Flame sect sat motionlessly with their eyes closed. One of them stared at the Tianji Business Alliance without blinking. At the entrance of the Business Alliance, they had been in this state for a full month. In other words, they had been waiting here ever since Lu Yi hid in the Tianji Business Alliance. It wasn't just the four of them, but also the entire restaurant. They searched. Even in the nearby buildings, there were tens of thousands of people. The hidden figures of the demon-rich cultivators. Unlike Chu Yun and Zhou Pei, at this moment, both Xiaoliang and Tan Sheng were full of emotions. Sorrow. It had been delayed for too long. Since the first time they met Lu Yi in the hunting ground, the two of them had thoughts of killing him. Until today they had already passed. They had been gone for almost 10 months, but they still didn't think he could succeed. According to the normal speed of cultivation, the two of them should have already advanced to the True Lake realm, but at this moment they were still wasting their time here. Looking around, how familiar was this scene? Last time, Lu Yi poisoned 20 million people in the mine. After the demon-rich cultivators, they hid in a Tianji Business Alliance. In the alliance, they were the ones who stayed outside to keep an eye on them. At the top, the same thing happened again. This was simply unimaginable. Endless pent-up anger and grievance turned into a belly full of resentment, grief and indignation. On the table there were a few dishes. Xiaoliang and Tan Sheng drank together, drowning their sorrows. Putting down the wine cup, Tan Sheng looked in the direction of the Tianji Business Alliance. He glanced at it and sighed. Brother Xia, in another 10 days heaven, whether Lu Yi appears or not, I have to leave. It's open. Xiaoliang paused in his action of picking up food and looked at him. Brother Tan, do you want to give up just like that? Tan Sheng shook his head. Of course not, but I have to give up. The Cloud River battle is about to begin. I need to calm down. I need to rest for a few days. For such a grand event, the cultivators of the 9 regions, perhaps we can only encounter it once in our lives. When it's time we should go all out. Then he looked at Xiaoliang and persuaded, Brother Xia, you should learn to let go and not be too stubborn. Yes. Xiaoyang remained silent. In fact, Tansheng and Lu Yi did not have much blood. It was easy to let go of a grudge, but he wasn't that simple. The bed was empty. If he didn't kill Lu Yi, how could he kill Li Baxian? How to take revenge for Yin Xing? After such a long time together, Tansheng also knew Xiaoyang. What was his obsession? Seeing that he was unable to persuade him, he gave up. What did he say? Last time. After a while, Xiaoyang spoke. What? Tansheng was puzzled. Xiaoyang said, I have a feeling that this is the only thing we can do. There's only one chance left. Brother Xia, you mean, that bastard's strength is growing too fast. Even if the Cloud River tier was a realm where one's cultivation progress was relatively faster, to begin with in the same realm, Lu Ye's growth rate was terrifying enough. It was terrifying. If the growth was purely in terms of cultivation, then, forget it. The 6th order Cloud River realm was far from the 9th order. There was still a big gap between their realms. However, the strength that Lu Yi displayed was truly shocking. Shock. A 6th order could kill an 8th order as easily as chopping melons and vegetables. If he advanced to the 7th order, wouldn't he be able to kill the 9th order? The ability of a 3rd order? He disappeared for more than a month before. He must have used that broken transmission array to go to some secret realm. I'm afraid he had some gains in his realm. He must have been trying to improve his cultivation. Xiaoyang's expression was solemn. He didn't even realize that at this moment, he was already wary of Lu Yi. He had a lot of fear. Now he is most likely at the 7th order realm. Tansheng's hand movements paused. He pondered for a moment and found that what Xiaoyang said was most likely true. So Brother Tan. Xiaoyang looked at Tansheng seriously. This is our only chance. If this is the only chance, if we don't succeed this time, I'm afraid there won't be a next time. The next time they met, it should be them hiding and landing. Moreover, it shouldn't be long before he shows up. Xiaoyang's tone was firm. If other Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators encountered such a thing, they would naturally return to the 9 states with the help of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance's Heavenly Secret Pillar. Their sect would be the safest. But that Louis didn't exist. He didn't do it when he was in returning Heaven Valley. He didn't do it this time either. Naturally, he couldn't do it this time. He couldn't do it this way. If he really improved his strength in secret, when he came out of seclusion, he would definitely appear again and stir up a storm. And this was also what Xiaoyang had been waiting for. This was his last chance. How sure are you, Brother Xia? Tansheng asked. If that was the case, this was his only chance. He really couldn't miss it. 8. Xiaoyang just spat out a word. His eyes narrowed as he stared sharply at the Heavenly Secret Chamber of Commerce. At the entrance of the Alliance, there was a mark that was enough for him to carve into his bones. Heart's figure slowly walked out. As if sensing his gaze, she raised her head and looked over. She came over. Their eyes met. Lu Ye's eyes were as calm as water. Xiaoyang's eyes were burning like torches. 100%. Xiaoyang drank the wine in his cup, put down the wine cup heavily, and stood up. At the same time, Chu Yun and Zhou Pei, who were beside him, also stood up. Not only that, the entire restaurant moved. The restaurant also became noisy at this moment, and then it became filled with noise. It spread to several nearby buildings. There are so many people. In front of the Heavenly Secret Chamber of Commerce, Lu Yi muttered softly. He took out his spirit boat and stepped on it. He rose into the sky and flew straight into the distance. As soon as he left, a large number of myriad demon-rich cultivators appeared behind him. Warriors followed him. In the guest room on the 3rd floor of the Heavenly Secret Chamber of Commerce, they looked through the window. This spectacular scene made Huaxi puzzled. Why? Why is it so lively wherever he goes? She turned her head and glanced at Yi. Don't worry. Are you? Yi smiled. Lu Yi is very confident. There's nothing to worry about. She had always been by Lu Ye's side, following him on his journey to the south. After experiencing all kinds of life and death crises in the north, he had long been used to this kind of ups and downs. She would be exhausted to death if she was constantly on edge. This time, Lu Yi didn't even bring Amber with him. Obviously, he was full of confidence. There was no need for her to worry about anything. At this moment, in the sky, the scorching sun was overhead, and a stream of light was in front. A large number of streams of light were chasing closely behind. The scene was hot. It was noisy. The ones at the front were naturally Xiaoyang and Tan Sheng. There were some powerful 9th and 8th order Cloud River Realm cultivators. As he chased, Tan Sheng sensed Lu Ye's spirit energy fluctuations, which could be used to determine the level of his current cultivation. Xiaoyang's previous words were very reasonable, so Tan Sheng also felt that Lu Ye's cultivation should have improved. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to suddenly appear like this. He turned around. He secretly sensed, but he couldn't figure it out, because Lu Yi seemed to be deliberately restraining his qi. His aura and spirit energy fluctuations were most likely due to a concealment, something like an aura talisman. Brother Xia, can you tell what his cultivation is now? Tan Sheng asked as they chased. He's definitely 7th order. Xiaoyang replied. Although Lu Yi was most likely using an aura concealment talisman, he wanted to hide his true strength. But there was no way to completely conceal it when flying on an artifact like this. This caused his aura and spirit energy fluctuations to fluctuate, sometimes revealing the appearance of a 5th or 6th order cultivator. At other times it seemed like a 7th order cultivator. Of course, it was also because of the distance. Lu Yi didn't fly too fast, and they didn't dare to chase after him. It was too tight, for fear that Lu Yi would rush back to the heavenly sky. Mecha Commerce Alliance. The two sides maintained a tacit understanding. Their speed. I think so too. Tan Sheng nodded. He was shocked. He was really 7th order. How long had it been? Why did Lu Ye have so many opportunities and opportunities? What about encounters? Sure enough, as Xiaoyang said before, this was already their last chance. If they couldn't get rid of the root this time, the next time they met, it was really hard to say who would kill who. While they were communicating, Chu Yun and Zhou Yu, who were not far away, had almost come to the same conclusion. Under normal circumstances, when a cultivator urged their spirit energy, their cultivation couldn't be concealed, because there would be a spirit. Spirit energy fluctuations fluctuated. An experienced cultivator could easily judge the strength of the spirit energy fluctuations. The level of a cultivator's strength. Lu Ye's spirit energy fluctuations and even his aura fluctuated. He didn't even let the myriad demon-rich cultivators behind him notice. His true cultivation relied on nothing more than one thing: the aura-concealing spirit tattoo. In order to be able to activate the aura-concealing spirit tattoo, while flying on an artifact, Lu Yi also put in a lot of effort to conceal it. This caused his spirit energy fluctuations to fluctuate. He had just advanced to the 7th order Cloud River realm, and hadn't had time to stabilize his realm. Fortunately, the distance between them wasn't too close, otherwise it would really look bad. It would easily be exposed. The people chasing from Myriad Demon Ridge didn't chase too closely. Lu Yi naturally knew what they were worried about. They were afraid that he would hide back in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance when the situation turned bad. Coincidentally, Lu Yi had the same plan. Now, things were getting interesting. As time passed, the distance between them and the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance was getting closer and closer. Far away. Until a certain moment, Xiaoyang couldn't hold back his impatience. He shouted anxiously, "It's about time!" As soon as he finished speaking, his speed suddenly increased, and in an instant, he shot out like an arrow. He shot out like an arrow, but in the next moment he suddenly paused. He stood in midair with a dignified expression. Behind him, a large group of myriad demon-rich cultivators chased over. The warriors also stopped in their tracks. There was no other reason. Lu Yi suddenly fell down, just stood there and turned around and said, "Hey!" He looked at them quietly. What was he going to do? Every myriad demon-rich cultivator had such doubts in their hearts. They asked. There was no way not to be surprised. They were clearly the ones being chased. Fong, however, suddenly stopped running away. This was true. It was too strange. "Is there an ambush?" Someone suddenly asked in horror. This immediately caused many myriad demon-rich cultivators to panic. It was chaotic. Although this person was asking a question, the people next to him could hear it. But it sounded like an affirmative tone. For a moment the scene was chaotic. The warriors looked around, but where could they see an ambush? There were no traces here. There was nothing here to hide. Even more so, it was impossible for anything to hide anyone. On the ground below, Lu Yi raised his head and looked up, revealing a look of disappointment. A motley crew. Chapter 754. Although his tone was light, everyone present was a Cloud River tier cultivator with outstanding hearing and eyesight. How could they not hear him clearly? They were all furious. However, even though they were angry, they also knew that Lu Yi was not wrong. After all, they were not from the same sect, and their relationship was not that close. Although they had attacked Lu Yi together, each of them had their own thoughts and did not have too many plans or unified commands. That was why Lu Yi had been able to escape so many times. It was also because of this that he had managed to escape when being hunted down. Therefore, even though they felt uncomfortable, no one refuted him. What they could be sure of now was that there was no ambush here. As for the formation that Lu Yi relied on the most, he should not have had time to set it up. Then what was the reason why the other party was so calm and composed? The crowd could not help but feel a little surprised. The scene suddenly became a little strange. There were clearly many myriad demon-rich cultivators chasing after Lu Yi, but at this moment they were all alone. At this moment the myriad demon-rich side, which had the advantage in numbers, was hesitant, as if they had the upper hand. Is Lu Yi not going to make a move? Lu Yi asked softly. Search. No one answered. Only the wind whistled past, and the atmosphere was austere. Lu Yi took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling at a rate visible to the naked eye. He squatted down slightly, staggered his feet, and raised his hand to press the hilt of the mountain plate saber at his waist. His eyes were lowered, and the black hair in front of his forehead cast a shadow, blocking the intimidating light in his eyes. If you don't make a move, then I'll do it. The moment the last word was spoken, there was a loud explosion, and the ground cracked like a broken mirror. Footprints. 2 floating footprints were left on the ground. With the help of the recoil, Lu Yi soared into the sky like an arrow released from a bow, pouncing straight toward the numerous enemies. In that instant, the aura that wrapped around him was like an ancient ferocious beast that had broken out of its cage, like a flood dragon that had come out of the sea in a rage. The shocking wildness and ruthlessness caused many myriad demon-rich cultivators to panic. The myriad demon-rich cultivators who had been chasing after Lu Yi had been wondering what the hell he was doing. No one had expected him to actually pounce on them like this. Although there were not many people chasing after him this time, there were still 200 of them, taking the initiative to attack. 1 man against 200. What's more? What kind of audacity was this? He really did not put them in his eyes. Everyone was enraged and instinctively attacked. In an instant, streams of imperial equipment and spell techniques blasted forward. Colorful lights intertwined and dazzled everyone's eyes. Among the many spells, the 2 fire spells were the most eye-catching. This was the technique that Chu Yun and Zhou Pei had used. Although the Sacred Flame sect was only a 4th-grade sect, they had once been a 1st-grade sect. Naturally, the disciples they taught would not be weak, especially since both of them were in the 9th Order Cloud River realm. The power of their attacks was even more extraordinary. A cracking sound rang out. It was the sound of Lu Ye's defensive spirit rune shattering. The blood spurted out, following Lu Ye's path, leaving behind a trail of scarlet. At the same time, the 2 powerful fire dragons had already appeared. Under the control of Yun and Zhou Pei, they attacked Yi from the left and right. Yi came at them from both sides. The fire dragons roared, shaking their heads and wagging their tails. Lu Ye's figure was instantly engulfed in flames. Many myriad demon-rich cultivators were shocked when they saw this scene. They almost couldn't help but cheer. We got him. Although they didn't know why Lu Yi was so arrogant that he could take the initiative to attack so many of them alone, it was still an unwise move. The only thing that made them feel regretful was that this time, they had all attacked together. Even if they killed Lu Yi, the reward would be divided equally among all of them. Good. Be careful, he's not dead. Suddenly, a cry of alarm came from the crowd. No one knew who had issued the warning. As soon as the words were spoken, A familiar figure rushed out from the flames. As far as the eye could see, Lu Ye's clothes were in tatters and looked terrible, but there was no trace of being burned by a fire attribute magic technique. The two most powerful fire dragons didn't seem to have caused any damage to him. Both Chu Yun and Zhou Pei were shocked. No one knew better than them how powerful their techniques were. Even if they were all ninth-order cultivators, it would be impossible for them to take their joint attack unscathed, but this Lu Ye had actually done it. Not to mention, Lu Ye's defensive means had been broken and his protective spirit chi had been pierced through. In other words, he had relied on his defenseless body to block their attacks unscathed. How is this possible? The explosion of the two fire dragons obscured the vision and perception of many myriad demon-rich cultivators. They reacted to the situation in front of them. They had made an error in judgment. When Lu Ye's figure appeared again, no one reacted. An extremely domineering and violent aura erupted from his body, carrying with it an indescribable sense of invasiveness and oppression. Many of the myriad demons' rich cultivators standing at the very front were instantly distracted and fell into a trance. Then a flash of saber light swept up a storm of death. Blood splattered and severed limbs flew, accompanied by miserable screams. Below them they descended. Fire! Countless figures stood in the air like dumplings. Wherever Lu Ye passed, no one could withstand a single blow. In an instant he opened up a bloody path in the crowd and killed his way to Chu Yun and Zhou Pei. The two spell cultivators from Sacred Flame sect only just came back to their senses at this moment. Both of them were shocked and their eyes were filled with shock. Lu Ye had specifically targeted the two of them. In a group fight, the first priority was to deal with those with longer arms. This was common knowledge in the cultivation world of the 9 provinces. For people like spell cultivators, once they were given space and distance, they would be able to unleash their full power. Moreover, compared to weapon cultivators and body cultivators who were used to close combat, spell cultivators had weaker bodies and were easier to kill. There were many spell cultivators gathered here, especially Chu Yun and Zhou Pei. Who else could Lu Ye target but them? They had never expected that Lu Ye would be able to get close to them so easily. They knew that their fire dragon technique had ruined their plan, but they also didn't expect that Lu Ye would be able to come out unscathed under such a powerful attack. Spell cultivators who were close to weapon cultivators naturally had to quickly distance themselves. So when they saw Lu Ye's saber slashing down, the two of them didn't even think about it. They surged their spirit chi at the same time and a huge repulsive force swept out in all directions. Sha Chu and Xiaoyang immediately frowned. The feeling from the spirit artifact saber in his hand made him feel that something was wrong. Logically speaking, even if the power of his saber was reduced by the defensive spirit rune, it should have been enough to cut open Lu Ye's back. Coupled with the attacks of Tan Shang and the others, Lu Ye would undoubtedly die. But judging from the feeling from the slash, the damage it caused to Lu Ye didn't seem to be as good as expected. He had once killed a 9th order body cultivator from Grand Heaven Alliance. The other party's physique was strong, so his slash couldn't cause any effective damage. At most it would cause some flesh wounds. In that battle, he fought with the other party for half a day and finally killed him. The feeling from the slash on Lu Ye's body was even clearer and stronger than before. This guy has such a strong physique. Without time to think, Xiaoyang's face changed. Not good. It turned out that Lu Ye had borrowed the power of these people's attacks to rush forward like a bolt of lightning. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived in front of Zhou Pei. Zhou Peihua's face changed. She and Chu Yun had just used their techniques to push Lu Ye away, even if there were 9 of them. Some of the myriad demon-rich cultivators were caught off guard and were thrown off their feet. The scene was chaotic. Lu Ye also seemed to have been pushed back a few dozen meters. However, Chu Yun clearly saw that Lu Ye had taken the initiative to retreat. He hadn't been pushed away. This guy has extremely rich experience in fighting against Dharma cultivators. He must have been tossed around like this before. But when Chu Yun saw the scene behind Lu Ye, his panicked mood immediately calmed down. Because this moment was enough for the nearby myriad demon-rich cultivators to come to their aid, especially Xiaoyang and Tan Shang. Powerful spirit chi surged. It was infuriating. Attacking left and right, their blood boiled as they attacked without mercy. Die! Xiaoyang roared. He slashed the long saber in his hand at Lu Ye's back. At the same time, Tanshang and a few other myriad demon-rich cultivators who reacted quickly also attacked. Lu Yi seemed to have eyes on his back. As his spirit chi surged, a thick spirit tattoo suddenly formed and turned into a barrier. Many attacks fell on the barrier formed by the defensive spirit tattoo and shattered it. Then many attacks fell on Lu Ye's body, slashing his back and causing blood to flow out. He needed an instant to calm down. At this moment she was in her most vulnerable state, and Lu Yi actually arrived in front of her at this subtle moment. Feeling the oppressive and violent aura, she smelled the call of death. She desperately summoned her spirit chi, but didn't maintain her own defense. She had a feeling that such a defense was meaningless. Sparks of light emanated from his body and spread out, enveloping a large area. Every spark transmitted an extremely dangerous aura, the prelude to Liaoyuan's explosive burial once in the battle arena. Hua Liaoyuan had used this secret technique of the sacred flame sect on Lu Yi. It was extremely powerful. If Hua Liaoyuan could use it, so could Zhou Pei. It had to be said that this woman from the sacred flame sect was extremely decisive and ruthless. Not only was she ruthless to her enemies, but she was also ruthless to herself. Once such a technique was activated, Lu Yi would be swept up in it and she wouldn't be able to avoid it. At that time, who would live and who would die would depend on their own methods. Chapter 755. Since Zhou Pei chose to activate it at this time, a secret technique that did not distinguish between friend and foe naturally had a certain degree of confidence. Yes, in any case, she was the one who initiated the secret technique. Zhan was able to control himself to a certain extent, receiving the least impact and damage. Sparks filled the air. Originally, they wanted to come. Many of the myriad demons' rich cultivators who had rushed to the rescue also sensed the danger. He didn't dare to get any closer. Instead, he quickly retreated. Go. Looking at the ferocious figure in front of him, Zhou Pei Shen. Although she looked flustered, her beautiful eyes were filled with viciousness. Explode! Along with the sound, those inconspicuous sparks instantly brightened up in the sky. Small suns appeared in the sky. Scorching and destructive auras with the many little suns as it rose, it swept out in all directions, distorting the void. The rumbling sound of the song was endless, deafening. Clang! Junior sister Zhou. Not far away, Chu Yun gazed at the enormous light and chaos. In the place where the chaotic spiritual power surged, a worried expression appeared on his face. Color. But soon his eyes became firm. Since junior martial sister Zhou chose to do this, then he could only believe it. However, in the next instant his expression changed drastically. Because in the chaos of space invisible to the naked eye suddenly, an aura was extinguished. That aura was the one that accompanied him day and night. It was Zhou Pei's. However, there was no other aura that belonged to Lu Yi. There was not the slightest change. Chu Yun's pupils constricted, and the depths of his heart were instantly drowned by a great sorrow. Although he didn't want to believe it, he had no choice. He didn't see what happened, but he was sure. It was certain that junior sister Zhou had fallen. Chu Yun was not the only one who sensed this. Xiaoliang, Tanshang, and the others' expressions changed at the same time. The afterglow of small suns dissipated, dazzling the light converged, and a blurry figure gradually appeared in the crowd. In his field of vision, judging from his height and figure, no. Who was Lu Yi? He stood in the middle of the raging flames. He was as steady as a mountain, twisting his body in the scorching heat. Churumo. Another figure suddenly descended from midair. It was Zhou Pei who fell down silently. Looking around, he saw Zhou Pei's eyes widened as if he had seen something before he died. It was an extremely inconceivable thing. Blood was everywhere. It was obvious that he had been stabbed in the heart and died on the spot. Life. Almost at the same time, Chu Yun instinctively turned his gaze to Zhou. At the moment of Pei's corpse, a fiery red light appeared. Suddenly, it emerged from the distorted space and shot towards Chu Yun. Chu Yun immediately regained his senses and looked over. The fiery red light was a pure condensation of spiritual power. The other end of the long whip was held in the ground. On Ye's hand. What is this? Chu Yun was shocked. He instinctively felt that this should be the case. It's the power of some kind of treasure, but it looks like it's a kind of treasure. What kind of sorcery? He did not have time to think. He could feel the might of the whip. He pulled away and was about to retreat. However, the long whip was like a spirit snake as it lashed out at him. With a pull and another roll, he tied him up tightly. Under normal circumstances, Chu Yun was a Cloud River 9th Order cultivator. He shouldn't be so careless. Zhou Pei's death was to his benefit. The impact on his mind was too great, and he didn't expect Lu Yi to be able to do it. Using such a strange method, he was caught off guard. He made a move. The moment it was tied up, the other end of the long whip there was a huge pulling force, and no matter how Chu Yun struggled, he couldn't break free, and his body was pulled over uncontrollably. What shocked him even more was that not only did the long whip bind his physical body, but it also had a certain effect on his spirit energy. There was also a certain degree of suppression, making it impossible for him to resist. He had no strength left. In a trance, Lu Ye's cold face was imprinted in his eyes. Then a snow-white saber light flashed past. The world was silent. Chu Yun stood in front of Lu Yi and watched quietly. Xiao Yang and Tan Sheng did not act rashly. Their eyes were filled with fear. Most of the other 10,000 demons-rich cultivators hadn't recovered yet. They had just recovered from the chaos and weren't sure what had happened. What had happened? Until this moment, when Zhou Pei used the Scorch Original Explosive Burial Secret techniques, residual power slowly dissipated. The space returned to normal, and Lu Yi and Chu Yun were close to each other. What kind of spell is this? Chu Yun suddenly asked. He asked. This moment he was finally sure. It bound him. His fiery red whip of spiritual power was a spell, and it was a spell. It wasn't the power of a rare treasure. He had read Lu Ye's information and knew that Lu Yi was a saber-using weapon cultivator. Not only did he have profound attainments in the Tao of Array, he also cultivated some spells. But the information had never mentioned such a spell. The existence of a spell, and in his knowledge, the 9-province cultivation world did not seem to have such a strange spell. As someone who had personally experienced the power of this spell naturally, he could sense how powerful this technique was. This spell had the effect of binding the enemy, but it could also kill the enemy. God-beating whip. Lu Yi replied indifferently. This spell did not come from the talent tree, nor did it come from his own cultivation. It came from the dragon soaring realm. Qin Zhao, who had stirred up a storm at a certain time. At the end of his trip to the dragon soaring realm, he spied on the dragon soaring realm. The power of the origin saw countless or shining lights in it, or dim stars, each of which is a ray of light. Mark. It was the mark left behind by the experts who had once lived in the dragon soaring realm. It was the mark that they had once lived in the dragon soaring realm. It was proof that they had lived. Lu Yi spied on one of the marks and had a very strange experience. It was a miraculous experience, in which he was able to possess Qin Zhao's body and was born with him. They joined the sect, cultivated together and fell together. They made a comeback and dominated the world together. Although only 2 days had passed since then. In that kind of dreamlike experience, Lu Yi had more than 2 days had passed. The important moments of Qin Zhao's life were imprinted. In his heart, he could empathize with Qin Zhao's cultivation. It could be said that during the time when he accompanied Qin Zhao as he grew up, he could take over everything that Qin Zhao had comprehended. The remnant origin of the dragon soaring realm was itself a huge treasure trove that had not been developed. And as a spell cultivator Qin Zhao could use, there were naturally many types of spells that came, and they were exquisite and profound. The God-beating whip was a spell that Qin Zhao created himself. It was his best spell, so even if Lu Yi did not cultivate it before, he could easily use it at this moment. Of course, because of his limited cultivation, he could not use this spell. The full power of a spell could be used to deal with cultivators of the same realm, but it was more than enough. The world now only knew that Lu Yi was extremely skilled in the Tao of Arrays. However, no one knew of his high attainments on the path of Dharma cultivators. On the path of spell cultivators, he was far ahead of spell cultivators of the same realm. If he really wanted to, the spell that he could use was also, it was definitely not something that cultivators of the same realm could compare to. Amazing! Chu Yun praised. As a spell cultivator, he had even more experience. After personally experiencing the power of this spell, He naturally saw the mysteriousness of it. If such a spell cultivator were to cultivate it, when one reached a high level, once it was activated, no one would be able to get rid of it. He gently led the way. With just this simple action, his head had already fallen. Blood spurted out from his neck, and the incision was neat. It was neat. Lu Yi had already beheaded him with a single slash. Everyone was terrified. Dead. 2 Cloud River Realm spell cultivators died just like that. Dead. They did not see clearly how Zhou Pei died. Because when the prairie fire explosion burial erupted, the scene was too chaotic. Lu Yi and Zhou Pei were both swept up in the chaos. They saw how Chu Yun died. There was a clue. But it was precisely because of this that they found it hard to believe. The Cloud River Realm 9th Order was already the limit of the Cloud River battlefield. The limit of Na was that he could call out wherever he went. No one dared to provoke a character who could summon the wind and rain. But in that short period of time just now, the 2 great powerful Cloud River Realm spell cultivators were killed just like that. Right under their noses. There were also more than a dozen 7th or 8th Order cultivators who died together. Cultivators. How long had it been? Since Lu Ye's sudden attack, it had only been 10 breaths. It was just a moment. Chapter 756. The death of 2 powerful 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators caused panic to spread. The main reason was that Chu Yun and Zhou Pei had died too quickly. In front of Lu Yi, it was as if they had no power to fight back. This undoubtedly had a great impact on the many myriad demon-rich cultivators who were chasing after them. What are you waiting for? Let's attack together and kill him. Tansheng suddenly shouted. Lu Ye's performance was shocking, and his increase in strength was incredible, but he was still alone. No matter how strong he was, what could he do? He could kill a dozen people, but could he really kill dozens or even hundreds? Even so, there were 200 myriad demon-rich cultivators gathered here. They could grind him to death. As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. The difference in numbers was the biggest advantage of the myriad demon-rich. It had to be said that although the cultivations of these myriad demon-rich cultivators were uneven, and they came from all over the world, they all had a fierce temperament. Therefore, even though the scene just now had shocked them, after Tansheng's voice fell, many cultivators still made a move together. After seeing how Lu Yi killed Chu Yun, no one dared to step forward rashly. They all urged their imperial artifacts or spells to attack Lu Yi. Lu Ye's spirit energy and vitality surged, intertwining to form a solid shield that emitted a scarlet color. At first glance, his whole body seemed to be burning. Facing the many attacks coming from all directions, he only focused on one direction. A pair of fiery red spirit energy wings spread out behind him, and his figure flickered as he pounced in that direction. Even if there are tens of thousands of people, I will go. His valiant and peerless aura coincided with the essence of the tyrant saber art. Although he was in a fierce battle, Lu Yi still had many profound insights flowing through his mind. He had no time to comprehend them. In such a big battle, how could he have the time to do anything else? With Lu Ye's charge, many myriad demon-rich cultivators in this direction naturally hurriedly scattered. However, there were still some who did not react fast enough and could not dodge Lu Ye's attack. Surrounded by a courageous aura, the coiling mountain blade slashed out a snow-white blade light. Flapping his wings, his silhouette flew through the crowd. Blood splattered everywhere, and miserable shrieks rang out. Silhouettes fell from the sky. With one slash, several people died. Although the cultivation of those who died was not high, they were still able to succeed in such a situation. It was enough to show the ferocity of this slash. This was not the end. Lu Yi stared at the figure of a myriad devil-rich cultivator, who was fleeing in front of him. Suddenly, his left and right hand, which was not holding a saber, slowly made a grabbing motion. In the center of his palm, a ball of condensed fiery red spiritual energy was caught in his palm. The spirit energy visible to the naked eye wriggled and changed. Under his exquisite control, it outlined a series of mysterious and complicated patterns. Like bamboo shoots after a rain, it grew rapidly and turned into a long whip in the blink of an eye. The deity striking whip reappeared. She raised her whip and lashed out at the figure. It struck the back of the myriad demon's rich cultivator. This whip almost pulled out the soul of the myriad devil-rich cultivator. He screamed miserably and his heart was filled with grief and indignation. Why is it me? So many people are fleeing in all directions. Why am I the one being targeted? The moment he was hit by the deity-beating whip, he finally understood what Chu Yun felt before. He also understood why such a powerful ninth-order cultivator could not even resist in front of Lu Yi. Because of this whip, the spiritual energy in his body was scattered, and he almost couldn't maintain his body. Without giving him any time to resist, the deity-beating whip wrapped around him and fixed him in place. Lu Ye's figure swept past him and the mountain-coiling saber slashed in a subtle arc, no longer paying attention to him. The person left behind fell straight to the ground, his vitality dissipating. Chasing after the myriad demons' rich cultivators who were fleeing in all directions, the deity-beating whip in his hand constantly swept out. Every time he killed a dozen people in a short period of time. Killing enemies in the same realm was like chopping melons and vegetables. In the past, these myriad demons' rich cultivators would only think that this was an exaggeration to describe a person's strength. But today they saw it with their own eyes. Every one of them was terrified. In terms of speed, they were not as fast as Lu Yi, so there was no way they could escape. Moreover, Lu Yi could use the deity-beating whip to restrain them. In the midst of the fierce battle, a cultivator full of vitality suddenly seized the opportunity and rushed towards Lu Yi from the side. Facing such a ferocious enemy, only a body cultivator with a strong physique would have the courage to do so. This body cultivator who suddenly attacked had been hiding in the crowd, not showing his strength. It was only at this moment that Lu Yi noticed his cultivation. Cloud River Realm 9th Order. It had to be said that the body cultivator who stood out at such a time made many myriad demons' rich cultivators feel relieved and relieved. The body cultivator held a spirit artifact shield in one hand and a mace-like spirit artifact in the other. Coupled with his burly figure, he gave off a strong sense of oppression. At this moment, Lu Ye's deity-beating whip just happened to wrap around a person not far away. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he pushed the spirit artifact shield in his hand forward. It slammed heavily into Lu Yi with an earth-shattering force. However, Lu Yi did not move at all. The body cultivator was shocked. The moment his spirit artifact shield slammed into Lu Yi, he felt as if he had hit an ancient tree rooted in the ground instead of a person. Shocked, he raised the spirit artifact in his other hand and smashed it down towards Lu Ye's head. Die. This strike was like a mountain pressing down. Accompanied by the eruption of his full strength, he was confident that no one in the same realm could block it. Even if Lu Ye's head was not smashed open, he would definitely be severely injured. Once that happened, he would die without a doubt if the surrounding people attacked again. The many thoughts that flashed through his mind were suddenly drowned out by boundless horror, because in the face of his aggressive strike, Lu Yi raised his saber to meet it. Attacking later, but arriving first, the collision of their spirit artifacts and spirit chi caused a loud bang. The crushing force of the mountain suddenly dissipated, and the mace that was smashing down was also firmly blocked. The body cultivator's eyes shrank to the size of a needle tip as he cried out involuntarily, "You? How can a weapon cultivator like you have such powerful strength?" However, before he could finish his words, an even more powerful force erupted. It was as if an earth dragon had turned over, and a copious and irresistible force attacked from the front. The weapon cultivator cried out in his heart, but before he could do anything, he was sent flying. Fortunately, he had a spirit artifact shield in front of him. Otherwise, this saber strike would have split him in two. "Louis!" Xiaoyang roared and a sharp saber intent swept out. Saber light flashed, enveloping Lu Yi who was standing in place. At the same time, Tan Sheng also attacked from the side. Since Lu Yi made his move, the two of them had been looking for an opportunity. However, Lu Yi was chasing the fleeing myriad demon-rich cultivators, and they were chasing after Lu Yi, so they could not make a move at all. It was not until now that Lu Yi was blocked for a moment by a body cultivator that they had a good opportunity to make a move. Especially at this time, Lu Ye's back was facing him. Although Xiaoyang did not want to take advantage of others, the other party was Lu Yi, so there was nothing to say. At the same time, he saw Tan Sheng, who was rushing over. being sent flying at an even faster speed than when he came. Before he could cause any real damage to Lu Yi suddenly turned around and slashed down with his saber. Xiaoliang was suddenly alerted and instinctively raised his saber to block. Boom. As if he had been hit by a meteorite, Xiaoliang turned into a stream of light and flew straight to the ground, creating a crater. He got up in a sorry state, feeling the blood in his chest and abdomen tumbling, and his mouth was full of blood. So strong. Xiaoliang's eyes trembled violently. When he realized that Lu Yi was already an 8th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator, he was already mentally prepared to not be his opponent. But only when he faced him in person could he realize how terrifying and powerful his opponent was. Compared to when he, Tanshang Chu Yun, and Zhou Pei worked together to send Lu Yi flying into the forbidden area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda, Lu Yi was completely different now. What made him feel even more horrified and sad was that after repelling him, Lu Yi did not choose to pursue him. Instead, he rushed to wherever there were more people. This seemed to mean that he, who had once chased Lu Yi all over the mountains and plains, was no longer qualified to be his opponent. Damn it! Xiaoliang gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. He calmed the blood in his chest and rushed into the sky again. As a core disciple of this generation of the Wild Blade sect, he shouldered the responsibility of bringing glory to the sect. When had he ever been looked down upon like this? On the other side, Tansheng felt the same way and made the same choice as Xiaoliang. The cultivators of Myriad Demon Ridge complained incessantly. At this moment it looked like they were besieging Lu Yi, but in fact it was like an ancient beast was robbing them. Wherever Lu Yi pounced, there would be the aura of death. The heads and limbs that had been chopped off by the long saber kept falling from the sky. Of the 200 people who chased Lu Yi out of Heavenji City, only a little more than 100 were left. The loss rate was as high as 40%. Hold on, he's about to die. In the midst of despair, someone roared to encourage them. In such a chaotic battle, even if Lu Yi had defensive spiritual tattoos protecting his body, it was impossible for him to be unscathed. At this point in the battle, his clothes were dyed red with blood, some of it his own, some of it his enemies'. The clothes on his upper body were almost torn into rags, hanging on his body. Through the gaps in his clothes, one could vaguely see the scars on his body. This was also the reason why the cultivators of Myriad Demon Ridge did not retreat even after Lu Yi had killed so many enemies and displayed such ferocity. Lu Ye's strength was terrifying, but after all, a person's strength was limited. He had suffered so many injuries that he must be an arrow at the end of its flight. If they gave up now, all their previous efforts would be in vain. At this point in the battle, even if it was not for the huge reward, even if there was no enmity between them and Lu Yi, they still wanted to see the result with their own eyes. A result that everyone was looking forward to. The fall of a genius. 7017K. Chapter 757. The fierce battle raged on. Many figures danced in the air as colorful world energy rays intertwined and shuttled back and forth. Apart from a few Cloud River 9th Order cultivators, none of the remaining Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators were Lu Ye's match. Whether it was a 7th Order or 8th Order cultivator, as long as Yang Kai found an opportunity, his saber would either kill or seriously injure them. Even the several Cloud River 9th Order cultivators were unable to withstand the indescribably violent slashes, and were forced into dire straits. The number of Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators continued to decrease. However, even though Lu Yi looked miserable, his aura grew stronger and stronger as he fought, as if there was no end to it. The shouts of the cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge rose and fell one after another, cheering for themselves and encouraging others at the same time. Lu Ye's tattered shirt was suddenly torn off. It was almost torn into strips of cloth, and his blood-stained shirt was torn off, revealing Lu Ye's slender and muscular upper body. His upper body was already stained red with blood, and under the scorching sun, he looked like he was wearing a red armor. However, all the Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators' eyes were filled with shock at this moment. They finally understood why Lu Yi hadn't died yet. This was because his body was covered with wounds of various sizes. However, not a single drop of blood flowed out from each of the wounds. In fact, some of the wounds even showed signs of healing. What kind of recovery ability was this? What kind of terrifying physique did he have? Search. Before this, everyone thought that after suffering so many injuries, Lu Yi must be at the end of his rope. It wasn't until they saw the truth of his injuries that they understood. Everything before this was just their own wishful thinking. Their thoughts of hostility continued. Such an enemy was no longer someone they, Cloud River Realm cultivators, could deal with. He was a F***king monster. There had never been a lack of courageous cultivators in the group of cultivators. Previously, even if they had suffered many casualties, they would still fight to the death with Lu Yi. Now that they saw the reality and realized that they couldn't defeat the enemy in front of them, some of them naturally made the right choice. Run! A low shout rang out, and the myriad demons' rich cultivator who spoke immediately turned into a stream of light and fled into the distance. Knowing that you couldn't defeat your enemy, that wasn't bravery but stupidity. There were many capable people in the world of cultivation. No one could say that they were invincible. If they couldn't win, they would run. There was nothing to be ashamed of. Preserving their lives was the most important thing. As soon as someone moved, someone immediately followed. In an instant, many myriad devil-rich cultivators gathered around Lu Yi. This was where the confidence of the demon-rich cultivators came from. Everyone in the myriad demon-rich thought that he was Big Brother Chang's weakest, but in reality, the injuries he had suffered were just superficial wounds. He just looked miserable. Even those flesh wounds were rapidly recovering under the immense vitality of his body. Xiao Yang was right. Compared to before entering the Soaring Dragon Realm's secret realm, Lu Yi had indeed undergone a complete transformation. At this moment, after seeing the true state of Lu Ye's injuries, all the myriad demon-rich cultivators who were still holding on to hope felt their bodies turn cold. They had worked so hard for so long and sacrificed so many lives, but they had only caused some superficial wounds to the enemy? What a laughable and pitiful scene! Unwillingness, anger, grievance, all kinds of emotions surged in their hearts, but it also caused many people to lose contact with Lu Yeji. They couldn't avoid the fate of dying one after another. Everyone was aghast. A huge question arose in their hearts. Why was Lu Yi still not dead? Why wasn't he dead? Up until now, many myriad demon-rich cultivators had caused at least hundreds of injuries to him. Under normal circumstances, the other party should have lost the ability to fight. How could the more he fought, the fiercer he became? After another fierce confrontation, Lu Yi stood in midair. Cultivators from the myriad demons rich surrounded him from all directions. Lu Yi didn't attack again, and the myriad demon-rich cultivators didn't dare to act rashly. They were all on guard, secretly urging their spiritual power. The scene was tense. He raised his eyes and swept across the faces in front of him. He casually waved the mountain saber in his hand and grabbed it. His saber. 2 of them were already dead, so there were only 2 left. He turned his head and stared at Tan Sheng, who was at the side. The moment their gazes met, a cold, murderous intent surged. Tan Sheng's heart skipped a beat. Without any hesitation, he quickly retreated and shouted, "Go!" These words were clearly shouted at Xiao Yang. He had been targeted by Lu Yi. Based on the means that Lu Yi had shown just now, he felt that he was doomed. Even if Xiao Yang was willing to stay and help him, the 2 of them were no match for the current Lu Yi. Since that was the case, he might as well survive. He would try his best to delay Lu Yi and give Xiao Yang a chance to live. With this thought in mind, a bloody mist burst out from his body, and he used the fastest speed in his life to escape to the back. However, what he saw was that the fiery red wings on Lu Ye's back only flapped lightly, and he was even faster than him. Swoosh! More than a dozen people left. In the next moment, more people chose to leave, and a gap immediately appeared in the tight encirclement. Working together was an atmosphere. Once it was broken at such a juncture, it could no longer be maintained. More people began to flee. Lu Yi frowned. He didn't expect that just taking off his shirt would cause such a situation. In the battle, his shirt had been torn into strips of cloth. It would affect his performance if he continued to wear it, so it was naturally more convenient to take it off. But it caused such a result. However, he soon understood the reason for this. He didn't chase after the fleeing myriad devil-rich cultivators because there was no need. Among this group he only had to kill 4 people. Dudu chased after him. The distance between them was rapidly closing. Sure enough, he couldn't escape. Tansheng's heart was cold. Between life and death, he was unprecedentedly calm. He desperately urged his spiritual power and burned his qi and blood, just to increase his speed by a little and delay Lu Yi as much as possible. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3. The distance between them was already less than 10 feet. Tansheng's retreating figure suddenly stopped. Then, in an incomprehensible way, he changed from extreme stillness to extreme motion, brazenly pouncing toward Lu Yi, the long spear in his hand stabbing out. Time seemed to stop at this moment. Tansheng's heart suddenly gave birth to all kinds of understanding. This spear, which he had poured all his strength into, had exceeded his own limits. There were great terrors between life and death, but also great opportunities. In his perception, the vitality in Lu Ye's body was like a ball of fire burning fiercely, vigorous and frightening. The strong vitality naturally made the physique stronger, and at the same time it also made the recovery ability more outstanding. Before the trip to the Soaring Dragon Realm, Lu Ye's physique was comparable to a body cultivator of the same level, and the trip to the Soaring Dragon Realm allowed him to obtain the final source of the Soaring Dragon Realm. After coming back from the dead, his vitality was as vast as the sea. This was also why when Lu Yi rushed out of the Soaring Dragon Realm, Wuxia sensed that his vitality was almost comparable to Shui Yuan's. The benefits of a vast vitality were not only tyrannical recovery ability, could also make the physique stronger. Of course, it was not at the level of a Divine Sea Realm cultivator, but if a Cloud River Realm cultivator wanted to cause real effective damage to him, it would be difficult. It would be very difficult. This was why he dared to face more than 2 million people alone. Comparatively speaking, Xiaoliang gave Lu Yi a greater sense of threat, and Tansheng was always a level higher. Now it seemed that he really couldn't underestimate anyone. Perhaps those who were originally inferior to others could surpass those who came later after an epiphany. In the face of this awe-inspiring spear, Lu Yi quickly raised his saber and stabbed forward. Tansheng was still immersed in his many comprehensions, wholeheartedly devoted to his spear. Suddenly, the scene in front of him changed. The scorching sun was clearly shining in the sky, but he seemed to see a sky full of twinkling stars. Then those twinkling stars wrapped in the sky and poured down. The stars fell, drowning the figure of the dragon. No matter how the dragon struggled and roared, it was useless. All the scenery shattered like an illusion. Tansheng was still in midair, holding his spear. Breathing heavily, he quietly looked at Lu Yi in front of him. This spear thrust with the intention of perishing together with the enemy allowed Tansheng to see through the secret of his own sect, a trace of the mystery of the great sage dragon spear. It turned out that he had practiced it wrong before. Lu Yi was aware of this momentary change in Tansheng. When his spear thrust forward, Lu Yi couldn't help but feel a trace of danger. In a trance, what appeared in his vision was not a spear, but a dragon shaking its head and wagging its tail. Opening its bloody mouth, it wanted to swallow him into its stomach. Spear intent. Tansheng's spear had undoubtedly touched upon the level of intent. If he survived this time, his strength would definitely grow by leaps and bounds, and he would have a chance to become one of the strongest Cloud River Realm cultivators. Tansheng and Xiaoliang had been inseparable these days. Both of their cultivations were Cloud River 9th Order, but when he looked down, he saw that his spear had pierced Lu Ye's waist and abdomen, but it had only pierced 3 inches into his flesh, not piercing through Lu Ye's entire body. Lu Ye's physique was so strong that it made people jealous. What kind of saber technique is this? Tansheng asked. Starry Sky. Lu Yi answered as he raised his hand and pulled out the spear that had pierced into his body. Blood burst out, but soon the flesh around the wound wriggled and no more blood flowed out. It's really powerful. Tansheng was not stingy with his praise. Changing the topic, he said, "It's not that my great sage dragon spear is inferior to your Starry Sky. It's that my cultivation is not good enough, and my skill is inferior." After saying this, his head suddenly hung down, and the aura that had locked his body dissipated. His whole body was like a balloon that had been pierced with countless holes. Blood flew out and fell straight to the ground below. Tansheng was dead. Even before his death, He seriously defended the prestige of his sect's secret technique. Lu Yi could understand, but since they were enemies, and the other party had repeatedly made things difficult for him before, he naturally wouldn't show mercy. Chapter 758. Before, his cultivation and strength were insufficient, so he could only try his best to escape and protect himself. Now that he had enough strength to fight back, he naturally had to take revenge. Turning around, he saw that the remaining myriad demon-rich cultivators had already fled. Even Xiaoyang's back was the only thing left. He was smart enough to escape in the direction of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Union. It seemed that he knew that only by escaping back to the Heavenly Secret Commerce Union would he have a chance to survive. The first 2 times Lu Yi had made such a choice when he was being hunted down. Now the tables had turned and Xiaoyang had made the same choice. It was a great irony. Lu Yi was not in a hurry to chase after him. Instead, he landed and collected his spoils of war. A Cloud River Realm cultivator's wealth was not small, especially when more than 100 Cloud River Realm cultivators had died at Lu Ye's hands. Even if he did not lack cultivation resources, he could not waste them like this. After a while he soared into the sky again and chased after Xiaoyang. In the distance Xiaoyang desperately fled, his heart full of sorrow. Previously, in the restaurant, he had told Tansheng that this might be their last chance because Lu Ye's strength had increased too quickly. If they did not succeed this time, they might not be Lu Ye's opponent the next time they met. But in fact Lu Yi did not even give them this chance. The expected 7th order cultivator had turned into an 8th order cultivator. Moreover, the terrifying strength Lu Yi displayed made it difficult for him to look back. He had directly crushed them with absolute strength. Before this, he did not dare to believe that a Cloud River Realm cultivator could be so powerful. Tansheng's aura behind him had disappeared. He knew in his heart that Tansheng was dead. They had been together for so long, and they had been working together to kill Lu Yi. It was impossible to say that they had no friendship. This made him feel a sense of sadness. Search. He took a moment to look back and did not see Lu Ye's figure chasing after him. However, he did not let down his guard. He still surged his spirit energy and desperately fled. He made up his mind that if he could escape this time, he would immediately return to the 9 states. He was no longer Lu Ye's opponent at the Cloud River Realm. Only by breaking through to the True Lake Realm would he have a chance of defeating him. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. Suddenly a sharp aura came from afar. Xiaoyang was shocked. He turned around and saw a red light in his field of vision. The red light wrapped a blurry yet familiar figure. It seemed to be unhurried, but in fact it was rapidly approaching him. So fast. Xiaoyang gritted his teeth and continued to summon his strength. However, his current speed was already his limit and he could not go any faster. Fortunately, Heaven's Legacy City was already in front of him. After estimating the difference in speed between him and Lu Yi, and then looking at Heaven's Legacy City, Xiaoyang's heart shook. I have a chance. I have a chance to escape to the Heavenly Secret Commerce Union. A strong will to live that he had never felt before surged out from his heart, making him feel as if his blood and qi were burning. As they got closer to Tianji City, Xiaoyang was just about to let out a long sigh of relief when Lu Ye's indifferent voice came from behind him. That's right, when Lu Ye was in the 5th Order Cloud River Realm, his speed was almost on par with Yang Kai's. Now that he was in the 8th Order, in terms of flying speed alone, no one in the entire Cloud River battlefield would be faster than him. Only now did Xiaoyang understand that the speed Lu Yi had shown before was not his limit. But why was he chasing after him so leisurely? Xiaoyang suddenly understood. Lu Yi not only wanted to kill him, but also destroy his heart. He had deliberately let Xiaoyang see hope of escape, but at the most critical moment, he had personally extinguished this hope. How vicious! The aura locked onto Xiaoyang's body was becoming more and more solid. The aura belonging to Lu Ye was also getting closer and closer. Looking at the heavenly secret city in front of him, Xiaoyang knew that he could not escape. The look in his eyes suddenly became resolute. He turned around, his eyes filled with determination and ferocity as he charged at Lu Yi. Since he was doomed to not be able to escape, he would fight to the death. In the blink of an eye, the two figures collided. Two long swords were unsheathed at the same time and slashed towards each other. Both sides' spirit chi exploded at the same time. Looking from afar, it was like two small suns had exploded in the sky. It was only a momentary stalemate, but one of them was sent flying. The spirit chi on his body became extremely dim, revealing Xiaoliang's battered figure. Previously, when he and the other myriad demon-rich cultivators besieged Lu Yi, he had fought with Lu Yi several times. However, he had suffered a big loss each time. It could be said that his strength had been damaged. In such a state, how could he gain any advantage in a head-on confrontation with Lu Yi? In midair, Xiaoliang tried his best to stabilize his body, but Lu Yi had already caught up with him. The long sword in his hand slashed towards his head again. Xiaoliang was worthy of being a core disciple of this generation of the Wild Blade sect. Even in such a disadvantageous situation, he still did not give up resisting. He raised the spirit artifact in his hand and accurately blocked Lu Ye's blow. However, before he could catch his breath, Lu Ye's other hand had already reached out and placed on his face. In the palm of his hand, a violent force suddenly erupted. Xiaoliang only felt as if he had been hit head-on. His already unstable body fell down uncontrollably like a meteorite crashing to the ground. With a bang, he landed 300 feet in front of the Tianji city, directly smashing a large hole in the ground. For a moment he was dazzled and his body went limp. He did not know how many bones in his body were broken. At this time, many cultivators were coming and going. When they saw the battle scene, they all stopped to watch. "Louis!" someone exclaimed, recognizing Lu Ye's identity at a glance. Following this exclamation, more people saw Lu Ye's figure. At this time, people's hearts were restless and almost couldn't help but attack. However, very soon another exclamation was heard. "Wild Blade Sect Xiaoliang?" The cultivator who recognized Xiaoliang's identity was filled with disbelief, almost thinking that he had recognized the wrong person. The Wild Blade Sect was a first-grade sect, and Xiaoliang was the leader of this generation. He had made a name for himself when he was in the Spirit Stream tier, and his reputation in the Cloud River battlefield was not small. It could be said that he was the strongest group of people in the Cloud River battlefield. There were definitely not many people in the Cloud River tier who could defeat him, but such a strong person was beaten like a dead dog at this moment? And the one who attacked was the famous Lu Yi? What was going on? In midair, Lu Yi held his saber and walked down step by step. It was as if there were layers of invisible stairs under his feet. His steps were calm, but his body was wrapped in a fierce aura. It was not that he did not see the Wanmo Ridge cultivators who were ready to attack him, but he did not care. Previously, he could kill 200 enemies by himself. Naturally, he could do the same now. Whoever dared to attack him would die. He did not mind killing in front of the Tianji city. In the pit, Xiaoliang stood up shakily, and a mouthful of blood rushed to his heart. He could not suppress it and spat out a mouthful of blood. His vision blurred as he looked at the familiar yet strange figure standing in front of him. He knew that in this year-long battle with Lu Yi, he had completely lost, and the price of failure was extremely heavy. The Tianji city was just 300 feet behind him, but he had no chance to break in. He spat out the blood in his mouth and held his saber with one hand. His weak aura was suddenly released, and his eyes were unresigned, but there was no regret. Memories flashed through his mind as if he had recalled something. Then Xiaoliang let out a deafening roar. "Kill!" Brazen and fearless, even if he was disabled, he took the initiative to launch the final attack. Because his life and death were not only related to himself, but also the honor of the Wild Blade sect. Lu Yi also rushed towards him. The two figures crossed each other. Lu Yi stood still, shook off the blood on his saber, and put it back into its sheath. His faint voice sounded in Xiaoliang's ears. "Our grudge ends here." Xiaoliang stood still, and his head drooped little by little. His vitality was quickly dissipating. The long saber was planted on the ground, supporting his body. The whole place was silent. All the cultivators who saw this scene, whether they were from the Haotian Alliance or the Wanmo Ridge, felt that it was incomprehensible and unbelievable. They did not see what happened before. But at the last moment, Xiao Yang of the Wild Blade sect was killed by Lu Yi, and they saw it clearly. The restless cultivators of the Wanmo Ridge could not help but extinguish the thoughts in their hearts. Lu Yi looked like he was covered in wounds and blood, but his aura was like the sun in the sky, making people unable to look at him directly. Everyone had a feeling that if they made a move at this time, they would be the one to die. Under everyone's gaze, Lu Yi walked towards the Tianji city. Until his figure disappeared, no one dared to block his way. He did not collect any spoils of war because Xiao Yang did not have a storage bag. Lu Yi guessed that Xiao Yang had the void tattoo like him. For a cultivator with a background like Xiao Yang, there must be a spirit tattooist in the sect. It was not difficult for him to inscribe a void tattoo. Long after Lu Yi left, the cultivators of the Wanmo Ridge came forward to collect Xiao Yang's corpse. Half an hour later, a piece of shocking news quickly spread throughout the alliance. Xiao Yang of the Wild Blade sect, Tan Sheng of the New Moon sect, Chu Yun and Zhou Pei of the Sacred Flame sect, led by more than 2 million cultivators of the Wanmo Ridge to hunt down Lu Yi. In the end, Lu Yi brazenly killed them all by himself. Chu Yun and Zhou Pei were killed on the spot, and the rest were less than 40%. Then Tan Sheng was killed, and Lu Yi chased Xiao Yang all the way to the Tianji city. 300 feet outside the Tianji city, under everyone's gaze, he killed the core disciple of the Wild Blade sect on the spot. According to the memories of the surviving cultivators of the Myriad Demon Ridge, the strength that Lu Yi had displayed in this battle had already surpassed the level of the Cloud River tier. Added with the fact that his physique and life force were extremely powerful, all of the wounds that he had sustained were only superficial, and they didn't affect him in the slightest. This was why he had such an unbelievable battle record. Chapter 759. When the news spread, the entire Cloud River battlefield was in an uproar. There were believers and there were also those who didn't. No matter what, in the same realm. With one person's body, against more than 200 people, the lone person had obtained a great victory. The side with more people had suffered heavy casualties. This matter was too far from the truth. Strange. Indeed, earlier, 2 cultivators from Myriad Demon Ridge had died. There were rumors of Lu Yi's hand, but that time Lu Yi had used some kind of highly poisonous substance. Seduso CC starter. In the end, it was equivalent to him secretly poisoning those earth cultivators. It didn't matter how strong or weak he was. The situation was completely different from this time. Even if one didn't experience it personally, just thinking about that one person's battle alone, the scene of fighting 200 enemies was enough to make one's blood boil. Not to mention, Lu Yi also killed those people who either died or fled. They fled. It could be foreseen that the aftermath of this matter would definitely still be in the Cloud River battlefield. It would ferment in the battlefield for a while, and the news would definitely spread to the 9 prefectures. At that time, the various Myriad Demon Ridge sects would probably be wary of Lu Yi. It would be even deeper. This matter was neither big nor small. After all, it was only a Cloud River realm. The impact of a matter at the realm level was limited. As time passed, it would slowly be forgotten and buried in the depths of memory. Somewhere. While the news outside was abuzz, Lu Yi had already brought along Huaxi and Enong, who all the way from Heaven's Legacy City to Taimang. Outside the mountain. A few months ago, many Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators forced him. He had no choice but to take the initiative to leave the returned Sky Valley Spirit Land. At that time, he was only a 5th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. Who would have thought that in just a few months he was already a Cloud River Realm cultivator? An 8th-order Origin Realm Master had returned once again. And this time, even if the Yang Qi leaked out, no one would dare to cause trouble for him. As for the result of the previous battle, many people expressed their disbelief. They didn't dare to believe it, but Lu Yi's strength had been recognized. After all, killing Xiao Yang in front of Heaven's Legacy City happened in front of everyone. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, it couldn't be faked. It could be said that this battle was enough for Lu Yi to ascend to the Cloud River realm, the strongest sequence of the realm. And he was only an 8th-order realm cultivator. He could still advance to the 9th level. Realm. Test. Back in the Spirit Stream battlefield, Lu Yi was a Heaven 8 cultivator. Fighting his way to the top of the spirit stream ranking, he looked down on everyone and was invincible. After advancing to Heavenly 9, he would be able to fight against Overlord-level demons without falling. Being at a disadvantage, he had single-handedly suppressed all the major sects in the core circle. Now, something similar might happen again. This made the cultivators of many sects in the Myriad Demons Ridge feel happy. Kyo's situation at the Cloud River battlefield was quite different from the situation at the Spirit Stream battlefield. There was no sect encampment in the city, so no matter how strong Wuxia was, even if it was big, it would be difficult for it to cause any hindrance to the various sections. In the Taimong Mountains, along the way they didn't see anything. He stopped. Soon they arrived at Huitian Valley. A familiar scene entered his eyes. The array had already been opened. A figure stood at the entrance of the valley and jumped around. It was because he had received the news in advance. Li Baxian, Feng Yuechan and Giant Armor. Fourth senior brother, senior sister Feng Giant Armor were back. He cheered excitedly, obviously in a good mood. Li Baxian greeted him with a smile and looked him up and down. Yi, after making sure that he was intact, then nodded. Little junior brother, you have received it. Bitter. His mood was a little complicated. His little junior brother was now an 8th order, and he had been painstakingly cultivating in the spirit land. Now he was only a 7th order. Not to mention that he was already one realm lower than Lu Yi in terms of cultivation. Only then. He had heard the news that Lu Yi had occupied 200 enemies by himself. He had heard it. He had also received confirmation from Lu Yi. Although he found it unbelievable, since it came from Lu Ye's mouth, he naturally believed it. Of course. So he clearly realized that. Between himself and his little junior brother. Not to mention that there was a world of difference in strength. He was definitely no longer. He was no match for him. But no matter what. It was a good thing that little junior brother was strong. The vendor on the street took care of it. 5. He had Xiayan himself in the outside stirring up wind and rain. The one who was most worried about him was probably 4th senior brother. However, sect master and 2nd senior sister were in the 9 regions. It was inconvenient for them to know what was happening on their side. But 4th senior brother was very clear about it. The saddest part was yes, facing Lu Ye's situation he couldn't help much. Last time he and Feng Yuechan left with the giant armor. They were going to meet up with Lu Yi outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. But they didn't manage to get up. In the end it was Huaxi who put in a lot of effort to bring Lu Yi out. He came out. Li Baxian shook his head slowly and patted Lu Yi on the shoulder. As long as he was safe. Then he looked at Huaxi and nodded. Junior sister Huaxi has also worked hard. To be honest, he still didn't understand until now. Huaxi was a medical cultivator. How did she manage to catch so many myriad demon-rich cultivators? She was the one who brought Lu Yi out of danger. Moreover, she had just advanced to the Cloud River realm. His junior brother and junior sister didn't seem to be Qi Zhongji. Things. This made him feel gratified, but he also couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. Illusion. Compared to the vast majority of Cloud River realm cultivators, his and Feng Yuechan's cultivation speed was already fast enough. Mi had been in the Cloud River battlefield for less than 2 years. 99% of cultivators couldn't reach his current cultivation level. Here. And because he had more than 10 years of Spirit Stream Realm Foundation, his true strength was definitely not comparable to an ordinary 7th order cultivator. At the very least, Li Baxian was confident that he could fight against Xia. Good but undefeated. One had to know that sword cultivators could kill enemies above their level, not to mention moreover he was Li Baxian. The pride in his heart made him understand that he had to speed up his cultivation efficiency. Otherwise, in the future, if he was left behind by his junior brothers and sisters, he wouldn't even be able to see their shadows. If he couldn't see them, he would lose face. While they were talking, Hupa had already jumped onto Giant Armor's head. On the bag he lay down steadily. Even though they hadn't seen each other for a long time, Hupa and Giant Armor's feelings had never changed. Following Lu Yi, his master, outside. The adventures on the surface were brilliant, but by Giant Armor's side, he had 8 was a unique feeling of comfort. Giant Armor smiled at Yuji. A ray of white light shone brightly under the old light. It was shining brightly. After not seeing him for a few months, this guy seemed to have become much stronger. Hidden in an ant's body was an amazing vitality and eruption. Force. Lu Yi stood in front of him. It was as high as his chest. He gently hammered his chest, making a sound of metal being smashed. The sound of collision. Lu Yi was very doubtful. Even with his current strength, if he didn't activate the sharp spirit tattoo, could he break through this guy's physical defense? In terms of physical strength alone, Lu Yi felt that there were 3 of him. Together, they might not be able to compare to the giant armor. However, to a certain extent, the creator was still male. It was flat. Giant armor was talented, but there were still some problems with his intelligence. To ordinary people, his intelligence was undoubtedly not high. He was not a fool, but his thinking was relatively simple. After a long separation, they were lively and chatting and laughing. In the end, Feng Yuechan couldn't help but sigh. Are you going to stand outside and talk like this? Li Baxian slapped his head and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Let's go back first. Speak. Everyone then headed inside together. After entering the range of the formation, the beautiful scenery of Huitian Valley was immediately imprinted in their eyes. Sister Huaxi, isn't this place beautiful? Yi moved closer to Huaxi. While showing off when Lu Yi chose this place to bury the spring spirit, she was happy for a long time. Girls always like beautiful things. Yi is the prettiest. Huaxi pinched Yi's face lovingly. Little face. Nong Yi was instantly overjoyed and held Huaxi's arm. She acted coquettishly. Among the flowers and plants, giant wolves were resting. They slowly stood up and looked towards the crowd. One of them was a huge wolf. Its fur was snow-white, and its body was particularly tall. It was even more human-like. He nodded slightly at Lu Yi. This was the first time Huaxi had seen so many demon general-level beasts. She couldn't help but click her tongue in wonder. She couldn't understand why Li Baxian and the others were so. How could they coexist peacefully with such a pack of wolves? The wolves have helped us a lot. Previously, when we left the spirit land at that time, they were guarding the house and waiting for us to return. There were no signs of invasion here, Li Baxian said as he walked. But then again, the spirit land of Huitian Valley was Lu Ye's spirit land. Many people knew about this matter, and no one was blind enough to do so. They dared to cause trouble. Even Xiao Yang and the others only dared to chase after Lu Yi. Why would they target the spirit land of Huitian Valley? Before Lu Yi left, he had left behind some harsh words. The number of lines in the group was much better. Post 10 sentences. He remembered that when he left, the wolf pack was only about 300. Looking around, it was obvious that there were more than 300. Li Baxian smiled and said, I don't know where the Wolf King came from. He would gather some of his clansmen back, and slowly, there would be more. Fortunately, these wolves would go out to hunt on their own, and they wouldn't do anything to disturb Baxian and the others. All they needed was a night with moonlight. At night, they would cultivate with the giant armor. Otherwise, just how to feed these beasts would be a big question. Problem. Now Lu Ye's strength had undergone an earth-shattering change. His Dao attainments had also increased tremendously. In addition, there were so many demon wolves. In the entire Cloud River battlefield, other than the Tianji Business Alliance, there was probably only one side with Huitian Valley. The defense was the strongest. In the center of Huitian Valley, there were a few wooden houses scattered around. Lu Ye's house had naturally been preserved, and there was a new wooden house. The house was next to Lu Ye's. This is junior sister Huaxi's house. Yuechan and I will fight together. I don't know if it suits junior sister's wishes. If it's not satisfied, junior sister, just say it. How could Huaxi be dissatisfied? She could stay in the 10,000 Poisons forest. Staying in such a place for nearly a year was not good for her life. The requirements of the environment were not too high. Very good. Thank you, fourth senior brother and senior sister Feng. Then you guys rest first. I'll prepare. I'll give it to you later. You guys welcome me, Li Baxian said with a smile. He had already taken out of his storage bag. He took out an apron and tied it around his waist. He looked like he was going to personally cook. The chef looked like he was going to do something. Such a big sword cultivator, but now he was acting like a chef. If Li Luxian's people were going to eat, Quan Zhu was going to eat. Surprise. But this was the other side of Li Baxian that no one knew. His cooking skills were actually quite good. Chapter 760. Return. Reunion. Joy. There was wine. While drinking, tipsy, under the moonlight, the few of them sat around a wooden table. The table was filled with delicacies that Li Baxian had meticulously cooked. The group chatted and laughed, toasting each other. Lu Ye's heart also calmed down. In the Spirit Stream battlefield there was a sect encampment, a place where sect cultivators could feel a sense of belonging. The Cloud River battlefield was different. 90% of Cloud River tier cultivators did not have a fixed residence on the Cloud River battlefield. They wandered everywhere in search of opportunities that belonged to them. Although the number of spirit lands was not small, not everyone could obtain them. Huitian Valley's spirit lands were created by Lu Yi single-handedly. It had resisted the invasion of many myriad demons-rich cultivators here. He had a sense of belonging to this place. He also had his fourth senior brother, Feng Yuechan Giant Armor, and the others with him. The outside world was exciting, but in the entire Cloud River battlefield, this was the place where he could stay. The moon was high in the sky. The bright moonlight poured down, covering the entire Huitian Valley with a layer of silver frost. Giant Armor finished the wine in the jar and got up to walk to the side. The wolf pack gathered tightly under the lead of the Wolf King. Giant Armor's huge and burly figure was particularly eye-catching even among the wolf pack. Looking around, it was as if he was the Wolf King walking alone and the wolf pack following him. He came to the place where he usually cultivated and got into that strange and unique posture. As he breathed, visible moonlight fell from the sky and was swallowed into his lungs. The howls of the wolves rose and fell one after another. Many of the demon wolves followed suit and bathed in the moonlight. As Giant Armor breathed, more and more moonlight gathered in Huitian Valley. It became denser and denser. The entire valley was covered in a hazy halo, as if it was in a sea of moonlight. No matter how many times I see it, I still find it incredible. Li Baxian sighed in amazement. He had never seen or heard of Giant Armor's unique cultivation method before. It did not seem to be a cultivation method but a kind of instinct, a kind of talent. He had tried to understand the mysteries of this cultivation method by Giant Armor's side before, but unfortunately, he did not gain anything. After these days, the wolf pack's overall strength had increased significantly with Giant Armor's cultivation. Without paying any more attention to Giant Armor, the two brothers continued to drink and chat until the sky was about to brighten. Only then did they return to their rooms to rest. It was rare that Lu Yi did not cultivate. Instead, she lay on her bed and had a good sleep. Ever since he left Huitian Valley the last time, he had been running around and fighting. After that, he entered the secret realm of the Soaring Dragon Realm. Even if he occasionally rested during this period, it was only to recover his physical strength and spirit. At this moment, using the hazy drunkenness, he finally completely relaxed. He slept all the way until evening. If it wasn't for Hupa licking his face, he would have slept even longer. In a daze, he raised his hand to grab the amber and threw it to the side. He slowly sat up and felt his entire body relax. The exhaustion of the past few days was swept away, and his mind was unprecedentedly calm and clear. Person's mind was like a bowstring. If it had been bouncing around for too long, an appropriate amount of rest and adjustment could often bring about great satisfaction. Yi Huaxiai and Feng Yuechan's soft laughter could be heard from outside the house. There was still some fragrance at the tip of his nose. It seemed that fourth senior brother had personally cooked again. He got up and pushed the door open. Sure enough, in front of the stove, Li Baxian was wearing an apron and busying himself. The three women were assisting on the side. "Morning," Lu Yi subconsciously greeted, causing everyone to be stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter. Lu Yi looked up at the sky and saw the shadow of the moon hanging high in the sky. It was obviously going to be dark soon. Not long after, everyone sat around the table again and tasted Li Baxian's cooking. However, this time they did not drink wine. Li Baxian only made some bland food. After all, cultivation was the most important task of a cultivator. No one was willing to waste time. Wasting time at this time might be the source of disadvantage in future battles. They had already delayed for a day. After today, everyone would enter their own cultivation. During this time, Lu Yi thought of something and took out 2 jade slips from his storage space. He handed one to Li Baxian and the other to Feng Yuechan. This is... Li Baxian looked at Lu Yi in confusion. A sword art, Lu Yi casually explained. In the Dragon Soaring Realm's secret realm, the one who left the deepest impression on him was not the bald monk with a strong physique and vigorous vitality from the Vajra Temple, nor was it the magic cultivators of the Imperial Heavenly Sect who were proficient in all kinds of mysterious techniques. It was the sword cultivators of the Howran Academy, especially the sword art. Lu Yi did not understand the way of sword cultivation, but this did not prevent him from seeing that it was an extremely profound sword art. He casually mentioned it in front of Yuan Changsuan that day, and Yuan Changsuan quickly sent the rubbing of the sword art over. In normal times, it was naturally impossible for such a top force to impart to outsiders, not to mention sending a rubbing for others to study. However, at that time the Dragon Soaring Realm was on the verge of destruction. Lu Yi was also recognized as the savior of the world. Not to mention the sword art, even if Lu Yi asked to be the dean of the Howran Academy, Yuan Changsuan would probably welcome him and abdicate. Compared to the survival of an entire domain, what was a single sword technique worth? Not only did Yuan Changsuan send over the sword art, but the Imperial Heavenly Sect also sent over many secret techniques. The Vajra Temple also sent over secret techniques to temper one's physique. Li Baxian was born in the Jade Blood Sect, and later joined the Pill Heart Sect. However, the Pill Heart Sect was not a sword cultivation sect. Although he had cultivated in the North Profound Sword Sect for a period of time, it was only as a normal exchange between cultivators of different sections. No matter how much the sword master of the North Profound Sword Sect appreciated him, he was not a disciple of the North Profound Sword Sect. The sword master could not teach him too much core knowledge. Li Baxian was born to be a sword cultivator who was famous for killing. If he could stay in the North Profound Sword Sect, his achievements would definitely be much higher than what he was now. The sword master of the North Profound Sword Sect had personally visited the Pill Heart Sect and expressed that he wanted to take Li Baxian as his disciple. Unfortunately, a despicable person interfered and did not get what he wanted. After that, Li Baxian's spirit acupoints were destroyed and he was stuck in the spirit stream realm for more than 10 years. Now that he had accumulated enough, his cultivation improved rapidly. However, he was not much better off than Lu Yi on the path of sword cultivation. He was basically fumbling his way forward. The book Sword Mantra was a timely help to him at this moment. Its usefulness was far greater than Lu Yi had imagined. Therefore, when Li Baxian picked up the jade slip and immersed himself in it, he was instantly immersed in it and could not extricate himself. Feng Yuechan also picked up the jade slip in front of her. After checking it, she found that it was full of records of many mysterious secret techniques. She also read it with great interest. In the Pill Heart Sect, her status was much higher than Li Baxian's. After all, her birth mother was a vice-sect master of the Pill Heart Sect. However, the Pill Heart Sect only rose to prominence a few decades ago. Its foundation was not strong and could not be compared to those large sects with long histories. The things passed down by the Imperial Heavenly Sect were naturally stronger than the Pill Heart Sect. The things recorded in the Jade Slip were undoubtedly very attractive to her. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan were immersed in the Jade Slip and could not extricate themselves. Lu Yi did not disturb them and just ate by himself. After a long while, Li Baxian let out a long breath and came back to his senses. He looked at Lu Yi and said, "Little junior brother, I won't say thanks to you. This sword art has helped senior brother a lot." Although he did not know where Lu Yi obtained this sword art, it was undoubtedly extremely precious. It must not have been easy for Lu Yi to obtain it. It's good that it's useful to senior brother. Lu Yi smiled. After a while, Feng Yuechan also came back to her senses and thanked Lu Yi with a smile. "Senior sister Feng is too polite. We're family, there's no need for formalities," Lu Yi said casually. Feng Yuechan pondered for a moment before her eyes curved into crescents. She smiled even more happily and nodded repeatedly. Little junior brother is right. With such a harvest, both Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan could not wait to comprehend the mysteries in the jade slip. Although the things inside could not help them improve their cultivation, they could increase their strength. Lu Yi saw this and said, "Fourth senior brother, senior sister Feng can go on ahead. I'll take care of things here later." Li Baxian nodded. "Then I'll leave it to you." He stood up and walked towards his room. After taking 2 steps, he turned back and said, "Oh right, remember to sign up for the Cloud River contest. There are only a few days left." After Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan left, Lu Yi was confused. What's the Cloud River contest? Why did he need to sign up? He had never heard of this before. Wuxia explained. It's a grand event operated by Heaven's Secrets. She slowly explained to Lu Yi. Lu Yi finally understood what the Cloud River contest was. On the Spirit Stream battlefield, there was a Spirit Stream list. Countless Spirit Stream tier cultivators fought for a place on the list and obtained various rewards from Heaven's Secrets to strengthen their foundations. However, there was no such thing as a Cloud River list on the Cloud River battlefield. There was only the Cloud River contest that was held once every 5 years. All Cloud River tier cultivators who wanted to participate could sign up through the Heaven's Secrets pillar. When the time limit was up, they would fight with different opponents under the arrangements of Heaven's Secrets. After these battles, the top 100 strongest cultivators would be determined. They would be the so-called Cloud River Top 100, similar to the Spirit Stream list. And these 100 people would all be able to obtain rewards from Heaven's Secrets. The reward for first place is 20 golden spirit lots. So generous? Lu Yi was shocked. He had worked so hard in the mystery realm of the Dragon Soaring Realm, and had almost lost his life. In the end, he had mobilized the power of the entire Dragon Soaring Realm to lay down the Great Heaven Mending Formation. Only then did he obtain close to 20 golden spirit lots, and this was under the premise that the Battle Merit Pavilion had given him a 10% discount. The reward for first place in the Cloud River contest was actually more than what he had obtained in the Dragon Soaring Realm. However, after thinking about it, it was not that strange. After all, this was a grand event that only happened once every 5 years. Moreover, it was a grand event that all Cloud River tier cultivators could participate in. At that time, there would be many capable cultivators and powerful cultivators. If one wanted to obtain first place in such a grand event, they would definitely have to risk their lives. 7017K. Chapter 761. Thinking about the hunting ground, the number 1 on the hunting list. As a reward, there were a total of 9 spiritual lots, plus 1 greatest spirit spring. The Cloud River battle for hegemony was such a grand event. It was reasonable for the hunting ground to have twice as many rewards. Moreover, Lu Ye's harvest in the Dragon Soaring Realm. Actually, it could not be used as a standard for comparison. Under normal circumstances, a Cloud River cultivator, even after experiencing a secret realm, the greatest possibility was that he would only obtain less than 3 golden spiritual lots. In comparison, the prize of the Cloud River battle for hegemony was amazing enough. This kind of grand event that only happened once every 5 years. Basically, every Cloud River cultivator had the chance to participate. This time, some cultivators could even participate twice. As early as 2 months ago, the Heavenly Secret had revealed itself. Now, the registration for the Cloud River battle for hegemony had begun. Now there were only a few days left before it would end. If he missed the registration time, then no matter what he did, no matter what strength he had, he was not qualified to participate. He could only wait for the next time. 2 months ago, Lu Yi silently calculated. At that time, he had just entered the not long after entering the Dragon Soaring Realm. He should be at the Tyrant Blade Mountain. He was cultivating the Tyrant Blade technique on the small island in the middle of the lake. After he returned from the Dragon Soaring Realm's secret realm, he stayed in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance for another month. During his cultivation, although Wuxia knew about the Cloud River battle for hegemony, he did not mention it, for fear of disturbing him, so it was only today that he knew about the Cloud River battle. There was such a thing as a hegemony. Fortunately, there were still a few days left. He had missed it. And I heard that you can win the Cloud River battle for hegemony. Those who get into the top 10 will not only get the golden spiritual lot, but also get the favor of the heavenly secret. Wuxia said. Then he added, the favor of the heavenly secret was invisible and formless. The biggest benefit was that it allowed the cultivators' morale to increase. It was always successful. Lu Yi had also been blessed by the heavenly secret many times. Thinking about it carefully, was there really anything? He could not explain it clearly. After all, luck was this. This thing itself could not be seen or touched. Sometimes his luck was good, but sometimes his luck wasn't that good. But for ordinary cultivators, the favor of the heavenly secret, Gu, was undoubtedly a great temptation. No matter what, since we've met, we should participate. It's not a bad thing to do it once, not to mention the fate of heaven. Does Gu have any effect? Those golden Solots prizes. Bosley was not just for show. Furthermore, with his current strength, now that he thought about it, his luck was still there. It was possible. Registration for the Cloud River contest began 2 months ago. At that time, he was at the 6th level of the Cloud River realm. Although he wasn't weak, he was still able to match up to Yun He. Against a 9th order cultivator, he had no chance of winning. Now that he was an 8th order Cloud River realm cultivator, it was just the right time for him to compete. Domination is about to begin. Was this the will of heaven? Or was it a coincidence? The registration process was also very simple. The pillar can be completed. Wuxia didn't sign up either, so she and Lu Yi immediately. Together, they arrived in front of the spiritual land's Tianji pillar. Sure. In the unseen world, the heavenly mystery fell, and a lot of information was revealed. What flowed in Lu Ye's heart was all about the struggle between the clouds and rivers. Tyrant had all sorts of rules. He understood, so he didn't ask any more questions. Note: for the present, him fate will meet. He believed that he could do his best for this grand occasion. He could get a pretty good result. There was no need to be too concerned. Lu Yi put away the bowls and chopsticks with Wuxia. Then he walked back to his room and sat down cross-legged. He swallowed a spirit pill and silently refined it. If it were anyone else, their cultivation would increase in a short period of time. If it was too fast, it would inevitably lead to an unstable foundation. It would take a long time to settle down and polish. But during the month when Lu Yi was in the Tianji Business Alliance, while he was improving his cultivation, he was also constantly entering the mirage to hone his body and familiarizing himself with the real growth of his strength. The tempering of life and death was far better than ordinary meditation, and polishing was much more efficient. So even if his strength increased rapidly, there was no sign of his foundation being unstable. Histo be able to bring out all of his strength. This was also the reason why he could easily kill Xiao Yang. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to exert his strength. It was also useless. There were still a few days before the Cloud River contest. It was enough for him to peek into the origin of the dragon soaring realm. Then, an unintentional attempt earlier had caused him to lose control, accompanying Qin Zhao from a peculiar point of view. The dragon soaring realm cultivator had walked his entire life and experienced his many important deeds in his life. The essence of Qin Zhao's life of cultivation. If not for this, Lu Yi wouldn't have been able to use a secret technique like the God-beating whip. With this experience, how could Lu Yi not know that the origin of the dragon soaring realm was awaiting to be developed? A huge treasure trove. Last time he was unaware. This time he was prepared. Lu Yi wanted to find a cultivator who used a saber in the dragon soaring realm. The imprint left in the origin of the dragon soaring realm. If he could do this, then his saber skills would definitely advance by leaps and bounds. His mind calmed down and soon he imprinted again. He illuminated the interior of the origin and entered the sky full of wonderful worlds of stars. Since ancient times, there had been cultivators who had lived in the dragon soaring realm. There were more than hundreds of millions of cultivators. Almost every cultivator had left traces of their existence in the dragon soaring realm. Time passed and future generations might not remember their existence. But the dragon soaring realm itself would not forget. Some traces would remain in the origin. The stronger the strength, the higher the achievements of the cultivator. the brighter the corresponding starlight, and the darker the starlight. Faint. Since Lu Yi wanted to gain something, he naturally stared at the bright starlight. However, he was still dazzled for a moment. There were talents in every generation. This strange origin. In the inner world of the origin, the number of dim stars was uncountable. The number of bright stars was also difficult to calculate. How to choose was a problem. Fortunately, Lu Yi was prepared. His mind light. From this starlight, he felt a hint of a faint sharp aura. Although he could not determine that the cultivator represented by this starlight was a saber user, at least he could be sure that it was a weapon cultivator. Because relatively speaking, the one representing Qin Zhao, that bit of starlight, seemed to be deeper. There was such an obvious sense of sharpness. His mind moved. It was the same feeling as last time. That bit of starlight was released infinitely in his mind. It was big and then it covered everything. The familiar sound of a baby crying rang out again. This was obviously the scene of a newborn. This time Lu Yi was mainly doing some tasting. Trying. He was judging the cultivation through the aura of the starlight. At the same time, he wanted to try whether he could control the starlight in such a scene to control the passage of time. In the end, he was actually borrowing the power of the dragon soaring realm. The origin of the dragon soaring realm was investigating the traces of those powerful cultivators. The traces left behind by the dragon soaring realm were then recreated. The cultivators' past experiences. Since it was an investigation, then he could naturally choose the time node instead of following it passively. The cultivator grew bit by bit. If he could do this, then in the future this way of doing things would undoubtedly be much more efficient, because so that you can selectively see something of value. Scenes excluding some meaningless scenes. Thinking like this, Lu Yi tried to do it come. Soon he had a clue. Perhaps it was because he had obtained the origin of the dragon soaring realm. It was not too difficult for him. With a thought, a wailing baby was born. Had already become a tall and straight youth. Different from Qin Zhao's merchant family background, the target of this investigation was born in a cultivation sect. In the sect, it could be said that the cultivation environment was unique. Under the effect of many spirit pills and miraculous medicines in the sect, he had laid a solid foundation since he was young. Time passed and the youth grew rapidly. As he grew day by day, Lu Yi seemed to be attached to him. After that, as he cultivated and fought together with him, he experienced a life and death battle, and quickly became stronger. The only thing that made Lu Yi depressed was that this time the target was not a saber user. This was a weapon cultivator who used a long spear. His clothes were as white as snow. The spear was like a dragon. He had made a name for himself in the dragon soaring realm. His great fame also attracted countless female cultivators to chase after him. There were groups of wives and concubines at home. Nothing could be perfect. Fortunately, whether it was using a saber or a spear, it was a weapon cultivator. Although Lu Yi was unable to improve himself because of this attainments in saber techniques, he also had a lot of insights. Experience. It was not without gain. Moreover, with such an experience, if he picked up a spirit weapon like a long spear, he would definitely be able to show the appearance of being immersed in this path all year round. He could use Qin Zhao's original god-beating whip at any time. It was the same. But this time the target was not as good as Qin Zhao. He was lucky. And this time the target was ambushed by an enemy. He fought with his own strength and finally died of exhaustion. When he died, he was not even 100 years old. It was a pity. Following his death, Lu Ye's mind, he also withdrew from the world within the origin. A sense of exhaustion came over. It was not as bad as the last time. It was so serious, but it also made people extremely weak. How long has it been? Lu Yi asked. Who was meditating at the side, said, "It's a long time. It's been half a day." Lu Yi nodded slightly. Most of the Cloud River battlefield. However, in the inner world of the origin it had been 100 years. Of course, this 100 years was not a complete one. Instead, Lu Yi had spent it selectively. There were some important periods of time, but they were definitely not just big. Half a day. When his mind returned, Lu Yi could not help but. He felt as if he had been separated from the world for a lifetime. He did not swallow the soul water to recover his body. After all, soul water was precious and was not in a hurry. If he could not waste it, he would not waste it. Moreover, his soul was strong and his mind was. His recovery speed wasn't slow either. During the recovery period he could use it to inspect. His own harvest this time was also in one fell swoop. Both. A day later, Lu Yi had completely recovered. Based on the calculation, there was about enough time for him to spy on it once. He immediately immersed his mind again and spied on the origin. Inside, he searched for the bright starlight. Time passed in a flash and 3 days had passed. Lu Yi, who was recovering from his inspection, faintly felt suddenly he sensed something. For no reason he understood one thing. One thing. The Cloud River battle had begun. He got up and walked out of the room. He saw Li Ba, Immortal, Feng Yuechan, and even Huazi giant armor pushed at the same time. The scene at the door. The few of them looked at each other and headed in the same direction. They walked in the direction of the divine pillar. A moment later, everyone gathered around the divine pillar. Sit. At this moment there was a muffled thud. That sound was deafening. At this moment the clouds above the entire Cloud River battlefield instantly disappeared. It dissipated into thin air. Chapter 762. Dong dong dong. The rhythmic muffled sounds continued to rise and fall, as if an invisible giant was beating heavy war drums above the 9 heavens. As the drums beat, Lu Yi felt the blood in his chest churning. He looked to the side. Whether it was Li Baxian, Feng Yuechan giant armor, or even Hua Xi the medical cultivator, their auras were fluctuating and their fighting spirit was high. Don't panic. It seems that before every Cloud River battle there is such a phenomenon. This is the operation of the heavens to boost morale. It is used to stimulate fighting spirit. Li Baxian's voice sounded. Only then did Lu Yi relax his mind. Just now he was still thinking that something had happened. The drums sounded 18 times. Search read after that. The sound of 3 long horns rang out leisurely. After the sound of the bugle horn, there seemed to be an army of thousands of men and horses coming through the air. The aura of iron and blood. It bathed the entire Cloud River battlefield in a somber atmosphere. Among them, Lu Ye's expression was strange. He didn't understand why the heavens of the 9 regions would do such a thing. Live. After a while the horn sound slowly disappeared. Above the sky there seemed to be a giant roaring. Fight! 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 Even if Lu Ye's mind was tough, he was still excited by this set of flowers. His fighting spirit flared up, and he wished he could find an evenly matched opponent right now. He wanted to have a big fight with his opponent to relieve the tension in his heart. Then Lu Yi saw a layer of ripples on the pillar of heaven suddenly spread out. After that, it spread in all directions. As the ripples spread, first Li Baxian's figure suddenly disappeared, followed by giant armor, and then Hua Xi. Xi and Feng Yuechan disappeared almost at the same time. At the same time, the battlefield mark on the back of his hand was also slightly. As soon as it was hot, an inexplicable traction came and his vision blurred. When he came back to his senses, he had already appeared in a battle arena. In the arena. Roar! Before Lu Yi could familiarize himself with the scene in front of him, a roar sounded in his ears. There was a loud roar. Turning his head, he saw a stranger over there. A burly demon cultivator with bull horns was looking at him with red eyes. 2 substantial heat waves were spurting out of his nostrils. He held a spirit shield in one hand and an axe in the other, pointing at Lu Yi. Lu Yi, you over there, brat, come and die. Lu Yi glanced over and knew that this guy was also affected by the heavens. Hua had been affected and was probably in the same state as him. It was the kind that wanted to find someone to fight. What else was there to say? Lu Yi took a step forward and rushed towards the bull-horned beast cultivator. The rear almost dragged the afterimage. Good timing. The demonic cultivator shouted and took heavy steps. Fa then walked towards Lu Yi. He was tall and sturdy, and his steps were strange. In just a few steps the 2 figures were right in front of each other. Lu Yi raised his blade and slashed out. The oxhorn demon cultivator stepped forward with his shield, and the axe in his other hand was about to strike. He waved his hand. He was overjoyed. In his first battle, he met someone who was known for his stubbornness. The weapon cultivator was indeed lucky. Furthermore, this weapon cultivator seemed to have been completely destroyed. His fighting spirit had been aroused, and he had actually used a saber to hack at his shield. What was this? Unwise? There were many different factions among cultivators, and each of them had their own weaknesses. But generally speaking, body cultivators had a certain degree of restraint over weapon cultivators. Yes, because if a weapon cultivator wanted to kill an enemy, he had to get close to the enemy. Without standing protection, it could naturally weaken the various methods of a soldier cultivator. Segment. Especially the spirit artifact shield in his hand, it was already a top-grade spirit artifact. It was at the level of a spirit artifact, and coupled with his 8th order Cloud River Realm cultivation. Although there was no chance for him to enter the top 100 of the Cloud River competition, he could still enter the top 3,000. There was still hope if he tried his best. Just as he was thinking this, a loud sound rang out. Asterisk boom. Asterisk the moment the saber and shield collided, a huge ripple visible to the naked eye appeared. The ripple spread out with a bang and collided with the barrier around the battle arena. The heavy air waves caused the light of the barrier to flicker. At the same time, the bull-horned beast cultivator felt a sense of powerlessness. A huge force of resistance came from above. As strong as his physique was, it actually hit him from above. He almost let the spirit artifact shield fly out of his hand. He staggered and half knelt on the ground. His counterattack also came to an abrupt end. Moo! The endless fighting spirit in the beast cultivator's eyes was instantly replaced by surprise. There was only one thought surging in his mind. This guy, how could he be stronger than me? There was no time for him to ponder. The mountain saber in Lu Ye's hand had already gone wild. It hacked down like a storm. As a weapon cultivator, the best way to deal with a body cultivator was naturally to stay close to them and search for the weak spots of the body cultivator's defense. Instead of attacking the other party's spirit artifact shield for a while like him, he hacked wildly. However, Lu Ye's fighting spirit was boiling, and he urgently needed a battle to vent. The bullhorn body cultivator was out of luck. He didn't even see Lu Ye's face clearly. Under the storm-like attacks, he hid behind the spirit artifact shield. Behind him, as the loud sounds rang out, his body became shorter and shorter. In the end, he could only use his shoulder to support his big shield. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to hold on at all. On the big shield, spirit light flashed wildly. He watched helplessly as his spirit artifact disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. The speed of its light dimmed. The smugness from before had long disappeared, and his heart ached a few times. He was about to bleed. He had spent a lot of money on this top-grade shield. He had only found a custom-made artifact refiner from the sect to be able to push his own advantage to the limit, all for the sake of the Cloud River competition. But looking at the situation in front of him, if he continued to persevere, if he didn't die, this spirit artifact shield would probably be cut into pieces. Who was the other party? The bull-horned beast cultivator was filled with grief and indignation. Admit defeat. Even if he was unwilling, even if the enemy's appearance didn't even have time to see clearly, the bull-horned beast cultivator still roared angrily. If he didn't admit defeat now, it would be too late. It didn't matter if he lost this battle. As long as his spirit artifact wasn't broken, there would always be a chance. But if the spirit artifact was broken, then the disadvantage in the following battle would be great. The battle method of the Cloud River competition was similar to the battle of the Spirit Stream list. One could take the initiative to admit defeat. As soon as his voice fell, ripples spread out, and the figure of the bull-horned beast cultivator instantly disappeared. Lu Yi slashed down again, but it hit the air. He hurriedly withdrew his saber when it was only an inch away from the ground. A hollow voice sounded from an inexplicable place. Lu Yi of the Jade Blood Sect wins. As the voice fell, a gentle force wrapped around Lu Yi and sent him out of this place. When he came back to his senses, he had already returned to his original place, but there was no trace of anyone else. He thought that they should still be fighting. In the middle. Lu Yi didn't think much of it and checked the battle mark on his body. The mark still recorded all kinds of information about himself, but the number of battle points had changed a little. Lu Ye's original battle points were 3232. He remembered this number very clearly. But now it had become 3,287. There was an extra 55 battle points. And the base number of battle points for an 8th order Cloud River Realm cultivator was 55 battle points. This meant that in the arena of the Cloud River competition, defeating one's opponent would give one a corresponding number of battle points. Wuxia had told him this before. Checking now was just to confirm it. It was precisely because of this reason that every time the Cloud River competition began, almost all Cloud River Realm cultivators in the 9 states would participate, regardless of their cultivation level. Because there weren't many channels for Cloud River Realm cultivators to obtain battle points, who wouldn't be tempted by the opportunity to participate in the Cloud River competition? There was no need to be afraid of those with lower cultivation. There would always be those with lower cultivation. Even if one won the entire competition, they would still be able to obtain some benefits. Of course, for Lu Yi, who had seen great battles and easily obtained 200,000 to 300,000 battle points, 55 battle points was no longer enough. It didn't arouse his interest. There was an additional message in the imprint. It was just below the battle points information. Cloud River competition stage. In the entire competition, the number of battle points obtained, the number of victories, and even the duration of the battle would be used as the criteria to determine the final ranking. And the one to judge all of this was naturally the high and mysterious Heaven's Secret. There was no suspense in winning the first battle. The battle intent in Lu Ye's heart was also greatly relieved. He raised his hand and pressed it on the Heaven's Secret pillar unhurriedly. His mind was connected, and after a moment of silence, ripples appeared on the Heaven's Secret pillar again. Lu Yi disappeared from the spot. The second battle had begun. The rules of the initial stage of the Cloud River competition were that cultivators could participate at any time within 7 days. If it was within their capabilities, they could participate in as many battles as possible to accumulate battle points. And the number of victories. However, the maximum was 100 battles. In other words, even if Lu Yi fought continuously without stopping, he could only fight 100 battles within 7 days. After 7 days, Heaven's Secret would select 3,000 people based on the cultivator's performance in the battles. Everyone outside of 3,000 would be eliminated. After that, the top 100 would be determined from these 3,000 people. The entire Cloud River competition would last for almost a month. During this period, not only were the Cloud River cultivators on the Cloud River battlefield immersed in the competition, but all the sects in the 9 states would also be paying attention, hoping that their disciples would obtain a good ranking and win glory for their sections. For some cultivators, this was undoubtedly a good opportunity to make a name for themselves. Since ancient times, the top 10 of every battle of the clouds and river had a promising future. Nowadays, almost all the Spirit Sea realm cultivators of the major sects had proven themselves in this grand event. For Lu Yi, the first battle was just a warm-up. However, after seeing his opponent for the second battle, Lu Yi didn't even have the mood to warm up. The cultivator opposite him seemed to be very nervous. He didn't look old, and his cultivation wasn't high either, only at the 5th order. Facing such an opponent, Lu Yi was afraid that if he used too much strength, he would kill him before he could shout out the word surrender. Moreover, he didn't know which camp his opponent belonged to, so he couldn't directly kill him. Lu Yi simply patted Hu Po on his shoulder. Hu Po understood and leapt down from Lu Ye's shoulder, roaring as he charged towards the 5th order cultivator to provoke him. The other party was obviously a little confused, but when he saw Lu Yi sitting down cross-legged, his face immediately turned black. Fellow Taoist, although your cultivation may be higher than mine, you don't have to look down on me like this, right? Lu Ye's posture clearly indicated that he wanted Hu Po to fight with him. Beat my pet first, then we'll talk. Lu Yi replied casually, then closed his eyes and began to meditate. There were still many gifts from the 100 Formation Tower in his mind that he hadn't digested yet. So this scattered time was just the right time to do this. Chapter 763. Hu Po rarely had the chance to fight head-on with his enemies. Usually when Lu Yi was fighting, he would quietly crouch on Lu Ye's shoulder, allowing him to borrow strength. Now that he finally had an opportunity, he naturally cherished it. He didn't even reveal his true body, only fighting with his cat-sized body. He fought with ease. In the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, Liu Ye's cultivation had jumped from the 6th order to the 8th order, so how could Yi and Hupa not grow? Hupa could easily defeat a 5th order enemy, even if he didn't use his full strength. The cultivator's mood gradually changed from initial anger to shock, then despair. After a few dozen breaths, he voluntarily admitted defeat. He couldn't even defeat a pet of his opponent, so there was no need to continue fighting. After he admitted defeat, his figure immediately disappeared. Liu Yi also left the arena and continued on to the next battle. And so the cultivation of the enemies he encountered was uneven. From the 1st order to the 9th order. Liu Yi didn't know what the principle of the teams was, but it was most likely a random choice. If the enemy's cultivation wasn't high, Liu Yi would let Hupa fight. Only when the enemy was above the 7th order would he take the initiative to fight. There were also some battles that ended before they even started, because the opponent recognized Liu Yi at a glance. In front of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, Liu Yi killed Xiaoyang in front of everyone. Now he was recognized as the strongest cultivator in the Cloud River realm. How could ordinary cultivators have the heart to fight with him after recognizing him? Anyway, he had to fight a full 100 battles, so 1 or 2 losses wouldn't affect him much. Occasionally, when returning from the battle arena, he would meet 4th senior brother and the others, casually chatting for a while before starting the next battle. Liu Ye's efficiency was very high. It didn't take 7 days at all. On the 2nd day, he had already fought a full 100 battles, and the result was naturally 100 victories. He didn't accumulate much battle points, only 2,000 or 3,000. There wasn't much to do after that. He just had to wait a few days for the list of the top 3,000 to be released before starting the next round of battles. Liu Yi wanted to use this time to spy on the Soaring Dragon Realm source. Although a few days wasn't long, it was enough for him to do it 2 or 3 times. What if he was lucky enough to find a cultivator who used a saber? However, he suddenly thought of something else and waited in front of the Pillar of Heavenly Secrets. Not long after, the space beside him twisted and a figure appeared. It was Li Baxian. Li Baxian's progress was undoubtedly fast. Although he hadn't fought 100 battles yet, he had already fought 60 to 70. His foundation was solid. Previously, because he was from Alchemy Heart Sect, he lacked the means to kill. Now that he had the calligraphy sword formula given to him by Liu Yi, he was very confident that he could break into the top 100. As for the top 10, it wasn't that Li Baxian was belittling himself, but he really didn't have much confidence. The great sects of the 9 states had produced many talented individuals. Li Baxian was amazing, but his cultivation was still lacking. He was only at the 7th order Cloud River realm. Furthermore, many cultivators who had reached the 9th order Cloud River realm deliberately chose not to break through to the True Lake realm in order to compete for supremacy in the Cloud River realm. Some people had been waiting for this event for 1 or 2 years. In these 1 or 2 years, their cultivation would not increase by much, but their foundation would improve. For people like them, although the reward of the Golden Spirit lot was important, the favor of the heavens was the most important. In order to fight for the top 10, they would definitely go all out. What's the matter, little junior brother? Li Baxian could tell at a glance that Liu Yi was deliberately waiting for him here. I want to return to the sect, Liu Yi said. At this time, Li Baxian pondered. Alright, then little junior brother can go by himself. The Cloud River battle would last for a month. After leaving the Cloud River battlefield, cultivators could only enter again after a month. If Liu Yi left now, he could return when the Cloud River battle ended. I will explain the situation to junior sister Hua Xi and the others. Then I'll go now. Liu Yi left as soon as he said that. He raised his hand and pressed it on the Heaven's Fate pillar. With a thought, the surrounding scenery quickly distorted. The next moment, he appeared in the Heaven's Fate Hall of the Blue Blood sect. He didn't immediately go to find the sect master or his second senior sister. Instead, he raised his hand and tapped on his battlefield imprint, looking for one of the imprints. Soon he found it and sent a message. After waiting for a moment, the other party replied. See you at the old place. Liu Yi raised his eyebrows. This message seemed to have some meaning, especially since the person who sent it was a very charming woman. Without thinking too much, Lu Yi raised his hand again and pressed it on the Heaven's Fate pillar. His mind connected to the Heaven's Fate treasure vault. Spirit artifact upgrade. Immediately after, he appeared in a small secluded space. In front of him was a stone platform. Apart from that, there was nothing else. Almost as soon as Lu Yi stepped in, a figure flashed in front of him. It was a woman who looked to be around 30 years old. Her skin was white and tender, and she wore a close-fitting floral dress that outlined her exquisite curves. Since they were old acquaintances, there was no need to talk nonsense. Lu Yi took the mountain pan saber from his waist and placed it on the stone platform in front of him. The reason why Lu Yi had hurriedly left the Cloud River battlefield and returned to the 9 states was because he wanted to use this time to upgrade his mountain pan saber. His cultivation had increased too quickly, and the mountain pan saber's quality couldn't keep up. Initially, the mountain pan saber was only a level 9 lower grade spirit artifact. Later on, it became a middle grade spirit artifact. Now it was a high grade spirit artifact. However, with his current strength, a high-grade spirit artifact wasn't enough to fully unleash his strength. Previously, when he fought against the 200 enemies of the 10,000 Demons Ridge, Lu Yi felt that even though he used 100% of his strength, he only managed to unleash 90% of his strength. This was the result of the spirit artifact's quality not being able to keep up with his cultivation. Furthermore, after such a long time, Lu Yi had fought with many enemies. No matter how sturdy the mountain pan saber was, there would always be some small scratches on it. However, if he didn't pay attention to them, it could affect the overall power of the mountain pan saber and affect the lifespan of this spirit artifact. The mountain pan saber's 2 upgrades were made by this woman who called herself Master Yu. Of course, Lu Yi could find someone else, but if it was someone else, he wouldn't know how good their skills were. At the very least, Lu Yi wasn't worried about Master Yu's skills. Previously, he had exchanged his battlefield imprint with her, so Lu Yi still wanted to find her to do this. However, this Master Yu's cultivation was definitely higher than the Cloud River tier. At the very least, she was at the True Lake tier. It was very likely that she was at the Divine Ocean tier. If Lu Yi wanted to contact her, he could only send a message back to the 9 states. He wouldn't be able to contact her on the Cloud River battlefield. If it were any other cultivator, they wouldn't make any changes to their spirit artifact at such a crucial moment in the Cloud River battle. This was because it could affect their ability to unleash their strength. Every cultivator in the top 100 of the sword finger rankings would try their best to maintain their peak condition. However, Lu Yi did this. If others knew about this, they would be shocked. In front of the stone platform, the woman looked Lu Yi up and down, as if she wanted to see his face clearly. However, from the woman's perspective, Lu Yi was currently shrouded in a cloud of fog. Not to mention his face, even his body couldn't be seen clearly. This was a protective method of Tianji. It was convenient for both parties to conceal their identities. However, this kind of concealment was meaningless to Lu Yi, who had once been blessed by Tianji. In this place, he seemed to have some special privileges that others didn't have. Thus, he could see the woman clearly. "Aren't you at the Cloud River tier?" the woman asked with a puzzled expression. Her voice was old. If someone who didn't know heard her, they would probably think that this was the voice of an old woman. "What's the problem? Seems that the Cloud River battle is now. Why aren't you participating? Why have you come to me to upgrade your spirit artifact?" Although her cultivation level was far superior to Yunhee's, she had naturally heard of such a big event like the Cloud River battle. She had also participated in this grand event in the past. And the reason she could determine that Lu Yi was at the Cloud River tier was naturally because the Pan Mountain Saber was a high-grade spirit artifact. A cultivator who used a spirit artifact of this quality had to be at the Cloud River tier. Of course, Lu Yi wouldn't tell her that the first 100 battles were over. He only said calmly, "What? Do you have to investigate the background of others when doing business now?" Ahem. The woman coughed softly. "That's not it. I was just asking casually. If you don't want to say, then don't say." She raised her hand and grabbed the Pan Mountain Saber in front of her. After unsheathing the saber, she nodded slightly. "Tell me your requirements." Upgrade to the level of a magic tool. The other requirements are the same as before. A spirit artifact had a limit of 36 seals. Any higher and it would be the level of a magic tool. The woman's heart skipped a beat as she came to a sudden realization. No wonder this little brat didn't participate in the Cloud River battle. It turned out that he had already reached the True Lake tier. This was because magic tools could only be used by True Lake tier cultivators. Of course, some Cloud River tier 9th order cultivators with strong foundations could also use them, but the cost was also high. This saber is only a high-grade spirit artifact now. If you want to upgrade it to a magic tool, surpassing the top grade level, ordinary people can't do it. She was obviously implying that she wasn't an ordinary person. She was also waiting for Lu Yi to ask her. But Lu Yi didn't have any intention of answering. He could only continue to say, "The materials required will not be too little, and those materials are not cheap. Name your price." Lu Yi interrupted her directly. After a few interactions, he could tell that whether this woman was at the True Lake tier or the Deity C tier, she was a pauper. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come to accept his request to upgrade the Pan Mountain Saber from low grade to mid grade. Moreover, she didn't seem to want too many people to know about her identity as an artifact refiner. Otherwise, she could use her skills to accumulate wealth openly. Therefore, it didn't matter if the woman asked for a higher price. As long as it could satisfy his requirements, Lu Yi didn't care about the trivial merit points. He had more than 100,000 merit points. Even if he used them all up, he could still take some resources from the Sex Treasury and sell them to the Tianji Treasury. 30,000. The woman gritted her teeth and called out a price that she felt was quite high. After a few interactions, Lu Yi could see some of her background. How could she not see some of Lu Ye's background? No matter where this little brat came from, he didn't lack money. It wasn't easy for her to open her shop, so she naturally wanted to get as much as she could. 7,017K. Chapter 764. Too expensive. Lu Yi didn't know whether it was expensive or not, but it was definitely true. After that, they entered the familiar haggling process. Although he didn't lack merit points, he didn't want to squander them casually. After probing each other, the price was finally set at 23,000 merit points. Lu Yi raised his hand and the Heaven's Secret contract appeared in his hand. He quickly drafted various terms and imprinted his own mark on it before handing it to the woman. The woman took it and imprinted her own mark. Thus, the Heaven's Secret contract was completed. Within half a month, I will contact little friend. Little friend, please wait for my good news. The woman said finally. Why is it taking so long? Last time it only took 3 days to upgrade the spirit artifact. Even if it takes longer this time, it shouldn't take half a month. This old master has other things to do recently. The woman explained casually. It was mainly because her cultivation had reached a critical juncture. If Lu Yi hadn't taken the initiative to contact her this time, she wouldn't have come out. Lu Yi nodded. He didn't care too much. Half a month was half a month. He immediately left the Heaven's Secret Treasury. When he came back to his senses, he heard Yi and Shui Yuan talking. Shui Yuan had sensed Lu Ye's aura and ran over to investigate. Second senior sister. Lu Yi turned around and bowed respectfully. I haven't seen you for many days. Shui Yuan's aura seemed to have become a little more vigorous. Clearly, her cultivation had improved. From this, it could be seen that her talent was also top-notch. When a cultivator reached the Spirit Sea realm, their cultivation would increase. It wasn't so easy. There were many Spirit Sea realm cultivators in the 9 provinces, but most of them were below the 5th order. Spirit Sea realm cultivators only accounted for about 30% of the total number. Looking at Shui Yuan's cultivation progress, her limit was obviously beyond the 5th order Spirit Sea realm. Why did you come back at this time? Although she was happy to see Lu Yi and Yi, this was a critical period in the Cloud River competition. Lu Yi running back at this time made her worried, thinking that Lu Yi had encountered some trouble. I was looking for Grandmaster Yu to upgrade my saber, Lu Yi explained. Shui Yuan knew that Lu Ye's mountain plate saber had always been upgraded by Grandmaster Yu. After learning that there was no accident, Shui Yuan was relieved. Looking at Lu Yi, Shui Yuan sighed in her heart. Lu Yi had caused quite a commotion in the Cloudy River battlefield. The novice Ren'inian was not a good-for-nothing who only had cultivation but no corresponding strength. He felt gratified. After speaking with Shui Yuan for a while, Lu Yi brought Yi to pay respects to the sect master. The old man was still the same as before. He was full of energy and didn't give too many profound teachings. He only asked Lu Yi and Yi about some of the interesting things that happened outside, laughing from time to time. The headmaster was undoubtedly very satisfied with Lu Yi, a disciple he had practically picked up. Lu Ye's contribution to Blue Blood Sect's current prosperity could not go unnoticed. If Lu Yi had not left his name in Blue Blood Sect would have been removed from the sect by the heavens during the sect ranking ceremony a few years ago. A moment later Lu Yi left, leaving Yi behind. Lu Yi was just a disciple of the Blue Blood Sect, but Yi could be said to be the sect master's personal disciple in name. Almost all of her spirit techniques had been personally taught to her by the sect master. It was rare for them to meet, so naturally, he wanted to test Yi's progress on the Tao of spirit techniques, and then teach her some more profound things. An enticing fragrance wafted out of Shou Zhengfeng's small kitchen. Shui Yuan was preparing food, and Lu Yi walked in to help her. The two of them chatted casually and happily. Although there were many disciples in Blue Blood Sect now, there were still not many people in the sect. Occasionally, a disciple would return from the spirit stream battlefield, but they would all leave in a hurry. The main reason was that the cultivation of the disciples was not high, and most of them were cultivating at the spirit stream battlefield. Lu Yi and a few other Cloud River tier cultivators also stayed at the Cloud River battlefield all year round. In this regard, Blue Blood Sect could not compare to other well-developed sections. However, time would always change everything. One day, when the cultivation of the disciples in the sect gradually increased, the hundreds of spirit mountains would also become lively. Lu Yi was looking forward to that day. I heard from Yi that your fourth senior brother is also cultivating with you now? At the dining table, Shui Yuan said casually as she served Lu Yi food. When you go back, tell him to drink less and don't learn from the Beixian swordmaster. It was the first time Lu Yi heard that fourth senior brother's drinking was influenced by the Beixian swordmaster. Ever since Jean Cloud River, fourth senior brother has not drunk much. Second senior sister, don't worry. Previously, Li Baxian's spirit cavities were broken, and he was depressed. He could not improve his cultivation, so he drank to drown his sorrows. However, after his spirit cavities were repaired and he advanced to the Cloud River tier, he really did not drink much. At the very least, Lu Yi had only seen him drink once on the Cloud River battlefield. It was when he brought Wuxia back a few days ago, and fourth senior brother gave him a welcome dinner. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Lu Yi bid farewell to Shui Yuan and rushed to Bright Heart Peak to visit Madame Yun. He was not considered a disciple of the sect master, but he could be considered a disciple of Madame Yun. Although he had a divine item like the talent tree, his foundation in the Tao of spirit patterns was taught by Madame Yun personally. Along the way, he went to Moon Lake to catch a few fish as a gift. Madame Yun was still the same as before, gentle as jade. Now that Lu Yi had a high attainment in the Tao of spirit patterns, Madame Yun no longer needed to teach Lu Yi in detail like in the early days. Basically, Lu Yi raised some doubts in his heart, and Madame Yun answered and dispelled them. As the saying goes, the master leads the way, but the cultivation depends on the person. After a series of questions and answers, Lu Yi gained a lot. Madame Yun was naturally very satisfied with the performance of her disciple, who did not have a title. She had seen countless people in her life, but she had never seen anyone with such high comprehension of the Tao of spirit patterns as Lu Yi. This was also the reason why she wanted to accept Lu Yi as her disciple. As a result, the sect master obstructed her, and she was so angry that she hit the sect master. In fact, the sect master did not want to ruin Lu Yi's future, because he knew that no matter what his attitude was, Madame Yun would teach Lu Yi carefully. He just wanted to use this method to pull in a strong support for the Jade Blood sect. It would be best if Madame Yun publicly became an elder or vice sect master of the Jade Blood sect. In this way, Lu Yi would be justified in becoming Madame Yun's disciple. Moreover, Madame Yun was a famous spirit pattern master in the 9 provinces. With this layer of protection, Lu Yi would have a backer when he went out in the future. He himself was not good, as he had too many enemies. If he relied on him, he would only die faster. In the end, he did not get what he wanted and he was beaten for nothing. Since then, Madame Yun did not mention the matter of accepting a disciple, but her teaching of Lu Yi remained the same from beginning to end. Many thanks for Master's guidance. Lu Yi got up and bowed respectfully to Madame Yun. Madame Yun was slightly stunned for a moment, but then she smiled. What did you call me? Master. Although they were not master and disciple in name, they were master and disciple in reality. If he kept calling her Madame Yun, it would seem distant. Therefore, Lu Yi was very willing to call him master. Madame Yun smiled even more happily and nodded repeatedly. Good, good, good. Her eyes were filled with kindness and love, and she felt that her relationship with Lu Yi had become much closer. That old fart won't let me take you as my disciple. I'd like to see if he can stop you from calling me master. Madame Yun suddenly became complacent again. She wished she could run to the right guarding peak right now and show off to the sect master. Lu Yi did not dare to speak. Chapter 765. Bright Heart Peak. Inside Yun Shuechu's bedchamber, Lu Yi circled around the maid and clicked his tongue in wonder. No matter how he looked at it, the maid in front of him was no different from a living person. There were almost no flaws. But soon Lu Yi saw that something was wrong, because there was no movement of spiritual power or divine sense from Yun Shuechu. In other words, this maid was not being controlled by her. Now Lu Yi was a little confused. He could be sure that this maid was indeed Yenshur's creation, but if there was no one controlling her, how could she move? How could she speak? Master, what's going on? Lu Yi looked at Yun Shuechu. Yun Shuechu smiled slightly and waved her hand, and the maid withdrew. Spirit-splitting technique, Yun Shuechu explained. Strictly speaking, Xiao Dai is my doppelganger. Doppelganger. Lu Yi was shocked. Although he was only in the Cloud River tier and was thousands of miles away from the spirit ocean, and didn't know anything about spirit splitting or doppelganger, he could see some of the mysteries and knew that this was an extremely amazing secret technique. I didn't tell you this before because I was afraid that you would bite off more than you can chew, Yun Shuechu said. Yun Shuechu said, presumably, you have also noticed that in addition to the orthodox cultivation methods of the major sects in the 9 regions, there are also many side paths such as the array path, the pill path, the path of weapon refining, or the path of Yenshur. But no matter which one it is closely related to the spiritual inscriptions. Even the spells used by the sect of Dharma cultivators are inseparable from the spiritual inscriptions. These can actually be regarded as branches of the spiritual inscriptions. Lu Yi nodded. As a spirit tattooist, how could he not notice this? For all other paths, the path of spirit veins is the foundation. If the path of spirit veins is strong, then no matter what path one cultivates, one can achieve twice the results with half the effort. Just like how Lu Yi could advance by leaps and bounds in the path of formations. Of course, he had received a huge reward from the 2 times he had challenged the 100 formation pagoda, but it was also inseparable from his solid foundation. And all of these were benefits brought about by the path of spirit veins. Lu Yi had already cultivated the path of formations, so Yun Shuechu never mentioned other paths to him. In fact, if Lu Yi hadn't taken the initiative to ask, she wouldn't have told him about it. To outsiders, Yenshur's Dao seemed miraculous, but if one really wanted to cultivate it, they would need to spend a great deal of energy and wealth. For cultivators like Lu Yi, whose cultivation was not high and whose main mission was to raise their cultivation, it was not advisable for them to come into contact with it too much. Especially when Lu Yi cultivated the array Dao. How did you know? Yun Shuechu asked. Back then, when she settled down in Clear Heart Peak, Shui Yuan came to visit her a few times. However, she didn't discover any flaws. One must know that Shui Yuan was already in the true lake stage back then. She didn't think that Shui Yuan's eyesight would be inferior to Lu Ye's at that time. "Master, please take a look at this." Lu Yi took out the damaged dragon throne from his storage space. "This is..." Yun Xuechu's expression immediately became serious. He reached out to take the dragon throne and gently stroked it. Divine light surged in his eyes as he carefully examined it. After a long while, she revealed a shocked expression and raised her head to look at Lu Yi. Where did this thing come from? Although this Yanshi armor was damaged beyond recognition, she could still see its terrifying power when it was in perfect condition. This thing, let alone her, no one in the entire 9 prefectures could create it. Lu Yi briefly recounted his experience in the soaring dragon realm, and also the origin of the dragon throne. The reason why he asked Yun Xuechu about Yanshi was to ask her to help repair this Yanshi armor. Originally, he planned to wait until his cultivation was higher and personally go to the Qianji Pavilion to find the Spirit Sea Stage cultivator there. Although they didn't know each other and didn't have any friendship, as a Yanshi, it was impossible to not be moved by such a divine object. If this Yanshi armor could be repaired, it would be of great benefit to the person who repaired it. But if his own master was also an outstanding Yanshi, why would he need to ask for help from an outsider? Knowing that the dragon throne had experienced such a magnificent battle, Yun Xuechu's eyes flashed with a clear look of heartache. If this thing was in perfect condition, she would be able to comprehend many mysteries from it. Even if it was damaged to this extent, its value was immeasurable. To her, this thing was simply an extremely precious gift. "Leave this thing with me, I will find a way to repair it," Yun Xuechu said. "But the person who created this thing has attainments in the Yanshi Dao that I can't compare to. I don't have absolute confidence, and even if it is repaired, it may not be comparable to the original power of the Yanshi armor." "This disciple understands." Lu Yi nodded. "Master, please do as you wish. Even if you can't repair it, it doesn't matter." As she spoke, she took out the huge dragon spine blade and placed it horizontally in the hall. "This thing is part of a set." The dragon spine blade was also damaged, its luster dim and its surface mottled. But even so, Yun Xuechu could still feel the monstrous ferocity hidden in it. Suddenly obtaining such a divine object, Yun Xuechu couldn't wait to immediately go into seclusion to comprehend its mysteries. Seeing this, Lu Yi naturally didn't want to disturb his master and respectfully left. He went to Yun Xuechu's library and returned the books that he had taken out last time. He also took out some books that he hadn't read before. Although there were many books here, Lu Yi had already read nearly half of them. He believed that it wouldn't be long before he finished reading all the books here. Xiao Dai sent him off again, but this time he didn't dare to be rude. Regardless of whether she was a clone or not, she was still his master. He respectfully left. Now that he had 2 more masters, Lu Ye's mood couldn't help but be subtle. After leaving the Clear Heart Peak, he didn't return to the main peak and went straight to the Green Bamboo Peak. This was Lu Ye's spiritual peak in the Jade Blood sect. Speaking of which, he was also the peak master of the Green Bamboo Peak. In other large sects, a peak master was qualified to accept disciples and teach them. The Jade Blood sect's main sect didn't have many people, and Lu Yi was the only one on the Green Bamboo Peak. Moreover, his cultivation was still low, so he naturally wouldn't accept disciples and teach them. His own Tao had just started, so how could he be qualified to teach others? He didn't see, who was obviously still listening to the teachings of the sect master. Only Hu Pe, whose stomach was bulging from being fed by his second senior sister, was lying on the peak and sleeping. There were still a few days before the second round of the Cloud River battle. Lu Yi took pills and cultivated while immersing himself in looking at the source of the soaring dragon. Time passed. Sensing that it was about time, Lu Yi got up and rushed to the main peak. The Jade Blood sect's Tianji pillar was at the main peak, and participating in the Cloud River battle required the use of the Tianji pillar, so he had to go to the Tianji hall. Just as he moved, he saw a stream of light fly out from the Clear Heart Peak and go straight to the main peak. "Master!" Lu Yi was surprised. The figure that flew out from the Clear Heart Peak was Yun Xuechu. The other party also saw him, and just nodded slightly at him, then flew over with a shocking aura. On the main peak, the sect master obviously sensed something and immediately went out to greet him, just in time to see Yun Xuechu's figure descending from the sky. Realizing that she didn't come with good intentions, The sect master asked in shock, "What's wrong? Come with me." Yun Xuechu looked like she couldn't be bothered to talk to him, and stretched out her slender hand, which instantly turned into a spirit energy hand, grabbing towards the sect master. Under this grab, it seemed like the entire world was going to be in her hand. The sect master's spirit energy and chi burst out, and an invisible wave of chi swept out, shattering the spirit energy hand that grabbed towards her. The sect master was stunned for a moment, and with an embarrassed expression he said, "I didn't do it on purpose." But then again, anyone who faced such a scene would involuntarily want to resist, not to mention he didn't even fight back. "Don't talk nonsense." Yun Xuechu's expression was completely different from the warm one she had when facing Lu Yi, and was full of coldness, once again reaching out to grab the sect master. A long sigh came out, and the sect master didn't resist this time. He could see that this woman was looking for him for something, and not to fight. It was just that, in any case, he was a dignified headmaster of a sect. In front of the few disciples of his sect, he had been captured like a little chick. What kind of scandal was this? Also, what was this woman doing? With a face full of worry, he didn't dare to say more, let alone resist. The spirit energy hand grabbed him and quickly flew away, falling into the clear heart peak. Lu Yi came to the main peak and heard Yi shouting in panic in front of Shueyuan, second senior sister. "It's not good. The sect master has been taken away." Shueyuan sighed deeply. "No need to pay attention to it, go do your own thing." The sect was unfortunate. Luckily, there weren't many people in the sect now, or else the old man's face would be completely lost. Yi looked at Lu Yi worriedly, and Lu Yi comforted her, "It's fine." His own master had taken Yi's master away, and it was really not good to get involved in this matter, so he pretended not to see. After letting Yi return to Hu Po's body, Lu Yi stuffed Hu Po into the spirit beast pouch, and then came in front of the Tianji pillar. There was still no news of Master Yu, and the upgrade of the Pan Mountain Saber obviously hadn't ended. However, this was also within Lu Ye's expectations. It didn't affect him much. Checking his own battlefield imprint, there was another column of information below the number of victories in the Cloud River battle for supremacy. Ranking top 3,000. The 7 days of the initial stage of the Cloud River battle for supremacy had already ended. Among the countless Cloud River tier cultivators, the strongest 3,000 were selected to continue to the next round of battles. This additional column of information undoubtedly meant that Lu Yi had obtained the qualification to enter the next round. He believed that fourth senior brother and the others should also have this qualification. Even if it was Hua Xi, Lu Yi wasn't worried. This woman was a medical cultivator on the surface, and her methods of using poison were undetectable. Moreover, her current cultivation wasn't low, and even if those ninth-order cultivators met her, unless they finished the battle quickly, once she found an opportunity, they might not even know how they lost. The 3,000 people had been selected, and the second round of battles was about to begin. After thinking for a while, Lu Yi took out a mask from his storage space and put it on his face. Previously, there were many people who recognized his identity and took the initiative to admit defeat due to his reputation. Now that the 3,000 people were selected, they would definitely have decent strength and wouldn't be as mixed as before. It could be said that these people would definitely give their all in the battles, all for the sake of obtaining a higher ranking. They were the most outstanding group of Cloud River tier cultivators of this generation. Lu Yi also wanted to test their methods and hide his face so that some of them wouldn't feel so much psychological pressure. 7017K, you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.